Today, we're going to cover some of the caving and cave diving disasters that we have covered on this channel. Be sure to subscribe for more videos like this. Have you ever experienced the sensation of falling from a great height? It's a frightening feeling, right? But what if I asked you to experience this from a height above 400 feet in a dark, mysterious cave? Wouldn't that be the most horrifying experience of your life? Today, we're about to share the story of two cave divers who faced that fate, leading them into darkness. One story tells of a tragedy that happened in an incredibly deep cave system, while the other highlights a brave cave diver who risked his life to face the unknown. What motivates these cave divers to venture into such extreme environments? Do they dive to discover lost treasure like we often see in movies? Let's uncover their true motivations and the stories behind their adventures. Before we dive into today's video, make sure to hit the bell icon so you don't miss any updates. We upload daily. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and join our amazing community. Now, let's get started. Our story begins with Marcin K., who was just 29 years old, a man with two great loves. By day, he worked as a network engineer at Life South Community Blood Center in Gainesville, Florida. For 6 years, he made sure that the center's computer systems ran smoothly, helping save lives. But when the workday ended, he dove into the water. For Marcin, each dive was a welcome escape. But little did he know that this particular dive at Weeki Wachee Cave would change everything. Florida is known for its beautiful landscapes, where sunny beaches and green wetlands come together. The Everglades, a famous national park, is home to many different animals and plants. With its warm weather, Florida attracts millions of visitors each year who love activities like boating, fishing, and hiking. Caves add a special touch to Florida's nature. Weeki Wachee Cave is one of these gems, with clear waters and amazing rock formations. It is a lovely place for anyone who enjoys nature, showing off the wonderful natural beauty of Florida. It was first discovered in the 1940s when a group of local divers explored the area. The cave became famous in 1947 when the Weeki Wachee Springs attraction opened, showcasing underwater mermaid shows that draw visitors in from far and wide. The crystal clear waters of the cave make it the perfect setting for these performances. Over the years, the site has seen changes in ownership and has gone through various renovations, but it has always remained a beloved spot for both locals and tourists. Marcin's was inspired by his father's Coast Guard service. This inspiration drove him to join KST Underwater Research, a nonprofit that explores thrilling underwater caves. At KST, Marcin thrived on adventure, diving into the depths where few dared to go. Each expedition was a chance to uncover hidden wonders and collect important data for science. The exploration at the Weeki Wachee cave system started off in the late 1990s, but strong water pressure at the entrance made it a challenge for even the most skilled divers. Everything changed in 2007, though, when a drought dramatically lowered water levels, revealing a gateway to adventure. Being a part of the team on March 31, 2012, Marcin felt a rush of excitement as he joined a 5-person dive crew to explore Weeki Wachee. This group had spent weeks getting ready for this adventurous dive into one of the deepest freshwater caves in the United States. They put together a 25-member team, including 7 safety divers, to make sure that everything went smoothly. Marcin's heart raced as they prepared to dive into the mysterious underwater world, knowing that working together was the key to a successful adventure. Marcin entered the water at 3:30 p.m. He was equipped with a full scuba tank and perfectly functioning regulators, and he felt ready for the exploration ahead. The cave's entrance was tight and narrow, small enough to allow only one diver to pass at a time. He navigated through the constricted passage, effortlessly swimming past the high-pressure water flow. Once Marcin reached inside, he descended to 180 feet, entering a large chamber. The atmosphere was both frightening and breathtaking, with tight spaces and jagged rocks creating a beautiful passageway. Previous teams had thoughtfully strung a white rope along the narrow passages, providing a clear path back to the surface. He kept his focus on the rope, confident that it would guide him along safely. After exploring around the cave, Marcin signaled that he was ready to go up. His team gave him the go-ahead, and he started his ascent, following the white rope. Each pull brought him closer to the light above. When he finally surfaced, he told the team about the passages around the cave. Marcin dived down again for round 2, but this time, the light from the surface began to fade, and a wave of fear hit him. The water around him felt empty, with very few signs of life. Normally, in freshwater areas like this, he would see many fish, but this unexplored part felt lifeless. The quietness made him uneasy. He began to go further down into the stillness, reminding him just how far he was away from the familiar world above. He had to push through his fear, focusing on his goal and trusting his training as he continued downward. After checking the surrounding area, he decided to go back up again, but that's when things took a different turn. His rapid rise caused a dangerous condition known as arterial gas embolism. This happens when a diver surfaces too quickly, allowing gas bubbles to form in the bloodstream. These bubbles can travel to the heart, brain, or other vital organs, causing serious injury or even death. Suddenly, Marson felt a sharp pain, and he knew that he was in trouble. Confusion filled his mind, making it hard to think clearly. Instead of following the rope as planned, he drifted off course into a tighter, more dangerous part of the cave, just 100 feet from the surface. The walls seemed to close in around him, and panic took hold as he realized how serious his situation was. The dim light up above faded, making him feel even more alone. Fighting against the pain, he struggled to focus, knowing that he had to find the rope and get back to safety. Marson found himself trapped in a narrow space, and the weight of panic pressing down on him. As confusion swirled in his mind, he struggled to understand what was happening. Every frantic movement only heightened his disorientation, and the situation was escalating rapidly. He fought against the urge to panic, knowing that losing control could mean disaster. Meanwhile, on the other side of the cave, the rest of the team finished searching the area and began to swim upward, completely unaware of the danger Marson faced. Deep down in the narrow passage, Marson felt the crushing isolation of his predicament. With every passing moment, his sense of urgency grew. Marson took a deep breath and he tried to remember where the rope was. When the other divers reached the surface after their search, they sensed that something was wrong. They quickly gathered together, exchanging worried glances. The safety divers had already surfaced and were anxiously discussing the situation. It became clear that Marson hadn't returned with them. Each diver understood the urgency of acting fast, as time was now critical. They pinpointed Marson's last known location and they prepared to dive back down. Their diving skills were now being tested as they focused on bringing their teammate back to safety. Once they reached the spot, the team sensed that Marson might be stuck in the narrow passages. They tried to pull him free from the crevice, but they couldn't reach him. The team also used light signals, but these failed to awaken Marson. Realizing that they couldn't help him on their own, the safety team resurfaced to call for rescue divers. Right after the team told the rescue authorities, they quickly descended again into the depths of Weeki Wachee Cave. The rescue team knew that the cave passages were difficult to navigate. After a challenging journey, they finally reached Marson. When they arrived, they found him unconscious, his regulator dislodged, and his mask pushed up. Despite their efforts, there were no signs of life. Marson's heart had stopped due to the embolism. Getting him out of the tight space was a big challenge. The narrow passage made it hard for the divers to move, and Marson's gear only made things more difficult. The rescuers knew that they had to cut through Marson's gear to free him. Working carefully in the tight space, they felt the pressure of their mission. The struggle to move in the narrow passage added to their stress, making every second feel even more important. The rescue team finally brought Marson's body back to the surface at around 4:47 p.m. His anxious teammates stood by, facing the harsh reality of losing one of their own. A careful check showed that Marson's tanks still had plenty of air, and all of his equipment was working properly. The cause of death was confirmed as an arterial gas embolism, leaving the team with many questions about how it happened. As they faced their loss, the team promised to remember Marson, not just for this tragedy, but for his passion for diving. He inspired them to explore the beauty of the ocean, and they would carry his spirit with them on every dive in the future. Our next story takes us to the Source du Doubs, also called the D Spring, in France. Located in the beautiful Jura region, this hidden spot attracts visitors with its amazing natural scenery and interesting rock formations. And among those attracted visitors was a man known as John Manili. He was eager to explore the D Spring with two trusted friends, including John Valentine. Valentine, an experienced diver, bravely went into the cave's depths. He laid down 145 meters, or 476 feet, of line, getting past obstacles that had stopped other divers nearly 20 years before. But this time, something worse was about to happen that would change everything. This karst spring serves as the source of the Dew River. The area surrounding the spring is rich in history and culture, with many archaeological sites and historical landmarks nearby. The spring itself is relatively small, with a shallow opening that gives rise to the Dew River. The water from the spring is crystal clear, with a distinctive blue color that is characteristic of karst springs. Cave divers love to explore the source de Dew for several reasons. One reason is the thrill of exploring a unique and challenging underwater environment. The source de Dew offers a fascinating opportunity to dive into a karst spring, which is a rare and exciting experience for cave divers. The spring is connected to a network of underwater tunnels and chambers, which offers a thrilling challenge for experienced cave divers. These passages are often narrow and winding, requiring divers to use specialized techniques and equipment to navigate them safely. John Manili decided to dive into the stunning source de Dew, a choice that reflected his adventurous spirit. Born in 1976, John was a dedicated individual with a strong passion for knowledge and exploration. John began his diving journey with local training, quickly becoming a trusted and skilled diver. Known for his curiosity, he encouraged fellow club members to explore new dive sites and practice safe diving. One of the things that made him an expert cave diver is that he always used to pay close attention to detail and understood the importance of maintaining his equipment. His thorough preparation ensured that he was ready for any situation underwater. On September 28, 2008, John Manili set out on an exciting journey into the source de Dew, joined by experienced divers John Valentine and Charles Reed Henry. They planned to dive independently, with each diver exploring the cave system alone. This way, they could cover more ground and enjoy the underwater beauty in their own way. Each diver was well trained and prepared, but the unknown depths of the cave always brought surprises. Little did they know that this adventure would lead them to unexpected discoveries and challenges deep within the spring. John Manili, an experienced diver, made a critical mistake despite warnings from Valentine and Charles. He chose a large rebreather, which might seem like a safe choice, but it was a bad idea for this cave. The narrow passages made it a recipe for disaster. The heavy rebreather could get stuck in tight spaces, trapping John and making it hard to escape. This could lead to serious trouble in the cave's confined areas. Now, despite these warnings, John decided to proceed, putting himself at risk. They all began to dive in separately. The entrance to the cave was a narrow passage, only 3.5 meters or 11 feet deep, which made it quite tight. Once John was in the water, he quickly realized he was having trouble navigating with his large rebreather. The bulky equipment made it hard to move smoothly through the narrow entrance, and he knew that he had to make a decision. John removed the rebreather to squeeze through the passage. This allowed him to progress deeper into the cave, but he also knew that reattaching it would be a huge challenge. The bulky rebreather and strong current would make it almost nearly impossible to put it back on safely in the tight space. But nevertheless, John decided to continue his dive deeper into the water, reaching a depth of about 1,056 feet when he suddenly encountered a problem. On the right side, there was a hole covered with rocks and dirt. Next to it, a narrow opening led to an upward passage filled with muddy water, severely limiting visibility. With the murky conditions, John couldn't see what lay ahead, making it difficult for him to move forward. The rocks and the muddy water created a significant obstacle, and he had to be extremely careful to avoid getting stuck. As John swam through the cave, he saw a passage on the left that led to another passage on the other side of the valley. This passage was narrow and tricky. He carefully swam through the passage, keeping an eye on how deep he was and how much air he had left. The passage started under a big hill, but the first 30 meters was blocked because of a previous rockfall. John, nevertheless, didn't give up, and he finally made it to the other side, feeling determined to keep going. After swimming about 555 meters, John reached a big bend in the cave. He kept going through the steep passage, moving around big piles of rocks and gravel that blocked his way. But eventually, he couldn't go any further. John was happy with how far he had come, but he also knew that he was running out of air. It was time to start heading back. John made sure that he had had enough air to make it back safely. On his way back, John went through the same passages that he had come from, facing the same challenges. As he approached the narrow S2 section, his heart raced. Big rocks blocked his way, and he imagined a worst-case scenario. What if I got stuck? What if I ran out of air? John quickly regretted his decision of removing his rebreather at the entrance, and now he couldn't put it back on properly. As he tried to squeeze through a narrow spot, his rebreather got stuck. John quickly decided to leave it behind and use his spare air tank instead. Right after John dropped his rebreather, he tried to swim up, but as he squeezed through another narrow spot, the air tank came loose from the hose which went to his mouth. When this happens, a diver is suddenly left without a source of air, which can be very dangerous, especially if they're still underwater and far from the surface or a safe exit. In John's case, he was still around 1,821 feet down, and in order to reach the surface, he decided to follow a safe ascent rate to avoid decompression sickness. The maximum ascent rate is 30 feet per minute, but the lack of oxygen began to affect him, and John passed out. Valentine and Charles finished their dive and returned to the entrance. After waiting for a while, they began to worry about John because they weren't sure where he was. For a moment, they thought that he may have gone into a deeper part of the cave. As time passed and he still didn't return, their worry grew, and they realized that they had waited too long. Fearing for John's safety, they called for help. Even though it was risky, they ultimately decided to go back into the cave to look for him. Sadly, they found John's body stuck under a ledge in the main part of the cave. The discovery was heartbreaking, and they felt the weight of their loss as they faced the reality of the situation. We have now heard the stories of Marcin Kay and John Manili, two brave cave divers who risked everything to explore the unknown. But sadly, their stories ended in tragedy. So, what makes people take such risks? Is it the thrill of discovery, or is it something more? Marcin and John loved cave diving, but it cost them their lives. Their stories teach us that the unknown can be both exciting and deadly. Eagle's Nest is one of the most intimidating caves in the entire United States. Located near the coast of west central Florida, it has been hypnotizing cave divers for years and sadly claimed many of their lives. Like a Bengal tiger, it is both mesmerizingly beautiful and deadly. It is widely regarded as one of the most dangerous cave diving sites, not just in the US, but on the face of the earth. Popularly nicknamed the Mount Everest of cave diving, it is strongly advised that only experienced professionals even consider attempting this site. But amazingly and tragically, as this story will show, even experienced divers can still fall prey to this apex predator of the caving world. Eagle's Nest is actually a sinkhole. Sinkholes are pretty frightening by nature. They are quite literally holes in the earth where the ground simply gave way and collapsed. Sinkholes have several different classifications, and some get created gradually while others collapse all at once. Either way, they often fill with water draining from the surface above, turning into what look like random little swimming holes drilled into various locations around the globe. The hole in the earth known as Eagle's Nest is about an hour's drive north of Tampa, Florida, and only about 1 mile east off the coast of the Gulf of Mexico. A lot of Florida's lakes and caving systems are admired and frequently photographed for their incredibly clear and inviting water. Not so with Eagle's Nest. The surface of this sinkhole is notoriously unattractive. For starters, it's green, and it's usually covered with algae. There are bugs everywhere, mostly the kind that want to suck your blood, and there aren't really any places to sit and put your stuff. The actual sinkhole is surrounded on all sides by a kind of swampy muck that stretches for many yards in every direction. Shrek would feel right at home here. Perhaps worst of all, the water itself is surprisingly murky. Even if you get your legs muddy and stand directly above it, you can't see what's below. In a way, that's a shame, because it turns out what's below is one of the most extraordinary underwater worlds that humans have ever uncovered. Below the surface of this relatively small and swampy body of water is a labyrinth that descends 300 feet below the Earth's surface. The intricate network of pathways extends for over a mile. According to the experts, it's so amazing that it can actually be unsafe. One expert who says this is Sylvester Muller, who is the vice chairman of the National Speleological Society's cave diving section. He says Eagle's Nest is like a Venus flytrap. You get in there and there is so much to see you get distracted, and it gets deep quickly. When Mueller says there's lots to see, he's not just talking about the amazing network of underwater caves. He's also talking about the life forms that exist inside them. Because of the narrow passages inside Eagle's Nest and the numerous sections that sit in total darkness all the time, unusual animals live inside Eagle's Nest. One is the cave-adapted crayfish. This bizarre creature is as white as a sheet of paper. You can see through its body well enough to see its internal organs from the outside. Most amazingly, for reasons that scientists can't yet fully explain, they can live for as long as 200 years. Despite the fact that they're stuck living in dark, maze-like caves such as Eagle's Nest where there is barely ever any food around. Speaking of science, another reason Eagle's Nest seduces so many divers is because of the highly unusual organic environment. According to National Geographic, things like bacterial cultures and algal mats found here might be good representations of what life could look like on other planets. The cave is a boon for biologists as well as explorers, although surely there is some overlap between the two. The two things on this planet that we've explored the least, and therefore know the least about, are the world underwater and the world underground. Eagle's Nest is both of these worlds combined, making it one of the most alien environments you can ever visit. Needless to say, the appeal of Eagle's Nest is obvious, and it gets many visitors despite being so dangerous. But since the early 1980s, no less than 10 people have died inside Eagle's Nest. In today's crazy world, where it seems like we hear about death and tragedy on the news every single day, that number may not seem as gigantic as it should. In the context of cave diving, a niche sport by nature, one single cave with a death toll in double digits is insane. It's so out of the ordinary that people living on the west central Florida coast have routinely begged for officials to close Eagle's Den permanently. Those calls grew particularly loud following the event that I'm about to describe. On the afternoon of Sunday, October 16, 2016, 3 divers made the trek out to Eagle's Nest in the hopes of exploring its hidden wonders. The 3 were there for a weekend trip which was supposed to include 3 full days spent diving. They were Chris Rittenmeyer, Patrick Peacock, and Justin Blakely. All 3 were experienced divers, and both Chris Rittenmeyer and Patrick Peacock had even explored Eagle's Nest before. As they wandered under the shade of the pine trees, they would have seen multiple signs in regard to the sinkhole that was just around the corner. One in particular would have definitely stood out, as I'm sure it does to most people who visit Eagle's Nest. It is a large white sign that says in bold red letters, "Attention Scuba Divers." The sign is a reminder that all divers are strictly required to have completed a registration process before entering Eagle's Nest. In order to register, they must be scuba certified and they must have the registration papers with them when they visit the area. This is a bold red indication that what you're about to do requires experience and qualification. It would not be the last warning sign the 3 men would see, nor the most disconcerting. Making their way past the sign, the 3 men would have soon come upon a small boardwalk. The boardwalk bridges the way over tall grass and muddy ground until it opens up to the treeless area where the sinkhole sits. Being the 2 in the group who had been here before, Rittenmeyer and Peacock probably went in first. They were intending to explore deeper areas of the cave than Justin Blakely, who was content to explore closer to the surface. There are 3 different tunnels you can take, fanning out somewhat evenly from the central spot where the cave entrance lies. Found along these tunnels are more than 6 dozen rooms, but the biggest and most famous is surely the Super Room. It's likely that both Rittenmeyer and Peacock would have wanted to explore this portion, meaning they would have had to travel down the upstream tunnel. There is also a downstream tunnel with more rooms in it. These include the Half Moon Room, Jim's Room, and the Room of Dreams. All 3 of these are at least 200 or more feet below. There's a stretch of the cave between Jim's room and another spot called the Pit, where the tunnel dips to 300 feet. It would have areas in the cave, such as these that Peacock and Rittenmeyer were exploring together, while their other friend Justin Blakely explored higher up. The group reportedly entered the water at around 2 p.m. They had agreed on a meeting point to come back to exactly 1 hour later. As they descended together, they would have quickly run into a sight that is impossible to ignore. A large white sign with the image of the Grim Reaper on it. It seems like there are more than one of these signs in underwater caves around Florida, but it seems entirely possible that Eagle's Nest was the first cave to get one, and the cave that inspired the disturbing sign in the first place. It says, "Stop, prevent your death, go no farther." It then lists some facts about the dangers of cave diving, including the fact that more than 300 divers, including open water scuba instructors, have died in caves just like this one. At the bottom, it says simply and hauntingly, "There is nothing in this cave worth dying for." After exploring the upper regions of the cave, Blakely returned to the meeting point on time. He discovered that he was the only one there. Initially, this probably wasn't too surprising, given that he had been exploring much closer to the surface than Rittenmeyer and Peacock, but after some minutes had gone by, he started to get worried. I'm not sure precisely where the meeting point was, but after a half hour, Blakely returned to it. Once again, he was the only one there. There was no trace of Patrick Peacock or Chris Rittenmeyer. News reports make it sound as though Justin Blakely continued to check the meeting point, then check again and again until about 6 p.m., 3 hours after the three friends were supposed to rejoin each other. At 6 p.m., he dialed 911. As you might imagine, Eagle's Nest is one of the worst places to try and look for missing divers. Not only is it incredibly deep, but it is also winding and narrow. It's almost like looking for someone inside the intestinal tract of the Earth. Despite rescue crews running to the scene and beginning the search immediately, they looked all through the evening with no luck. The amount of time that had passed at this point sadly left little room for hope. It had been hours since they first descended, and scuba air tanks usually don't last much longer than 1 hour. At the extreme depth of the rooms in Eagle's Nest, that time would likely be shortened even further. The grim search continued until the following morning on October 17th. Given the circumstances, this must have felt like half an eternity. But finally, rescue made the tragic discovery everyone was dreading. The dead bodies of Chris Rittenmeyer and Patrick Peacock were found relatively close to each other. According to the sheriff's office in the surrounding county of Hernando, the two divers were both found in a very dangerous and complex area of the cave system. Rescue divers estimated that Chris and Patrick were trapped roughly 260 feet below the surface. To put this into perspective, that is only a few stories less than the full height of the Statue of Liberty. And they didn't have a straight shot to the top either. They were buried under a notoriously circuitous network of dark, narrow caves. This was a horrific, horrific way to die. The story received nationwide media attention, even being covered on CBS Morning News. Like many stories about caving exploration gone wrong, most of the focus was put on the dangers of the cave and the tragic outcome. And as a result, it seems like there is no mystery. Dangerous cave, deadly accident. This seems like an especially complete explanation in the case of Eagle's Den, where it had already happened numerous times before. Clearly something went really wrong with both Chris's and Patrick's dives. But interestingly, on the National Speleological Society's online database, the incident type is listed as unknown. Throughout various news articles, TV segments, and other sources, I did not find a definitive answer as to what actually went wrong. In a cave as challenging as Eagle's Nest, there is quite a lot that could have gone wrong. Perhaps they didn't reserve the amount of gas they needed. Maybe they accidentally knocked around silt or sediment on the floor or walls that obscured their vision. One strong vulnerability in a winding cave like Eagle's Nest is making some kind of a mistake with the guideline they're running. It could be some combination of these factors, or it could be something else. Whatever it was, it trapped Chris Rittenmeyer and Patrick Peacock 260 feet down inside Eagle's Nest and ensured they never saw the light of day again. One of Idaho's most dangerous caves, where cold, rushing water echoes off the walls and the darkness is all around you. Two cavers, one experienced and the other just a teenager, find themselves trapped in a 40-feet pit with icy water pouring down. The situation grows more desperate with every passing minute. Will they make it out alive, or will this adventure end in tragedy? Let's uncover the gripping story of their harrowing journey. Papoose Cave, one of Idaho's largest limestone caves, is located in the Nez Perce National Forest, about 6 miles southwest of Riggins, Idaho. The cave is nestled in the drainage area of the Little Salmon River, with entrances sitting at more than 5,000 feet above sea level. This high elevation creates a harsh environment inside the cave, where temperatures remain around 36 degrees Fahrenheit throughout the year. Due to the cold and challenging conditions, only a few species of plants and animals can survive, mostly near the cave's entrances. The cave has 2 known entrances. The main entrance is easily accessible, but the other one is situated about 35 feet above and 40 feet west of the main entrance, making it harder to reach. Inside, Papoose Cave is a maze of deep, narrow passages that twist and turn, making exploration difficult. Adding to the challenge are 3 waterfalls within the cave, which make studying and navigating the cave even more complicated. One of the most striking features of Papoose Cave is its dramatic drop. The cave descends more than 800 feet from the upper entrance to a terminal siphon, a natural endpoint where water fills the passage. This steep drop occurs over a horizontal distance of less than 2,500 feet to the southeast. The cave's passages follow a joint-controlled rectilinear pattern, which means the cave's layout is mostly straight and follows the natural fractures in the rock. However, stream erosion over time has softened these straight lines, creating short, curved passages that resemble mature stream channels. Papoose Cave is carved out of the Martin Bridge limestone, a type of rock that formed from marine deposits during the late Triassic period, millions of years ago. The cave's formation likely began during a regional uplift in the late Tertiary period, when water from surface streams started eroding the rock, creating the canyon-like passages we see today. Many parts of the cave floor are covered with stream cobbles, rounded stones that were carried in by flowing water. While breakdowns, or collapses of cave passages, are not common in Papoose Cave, there are still a variety of speleothems, beautiful mineral formations like stalactites and stalagmites, found in certain parts of the cave, adding to its natural beauty. Exploring Papoose Cave is not for the faint-hearted. Its remote location, challenging environment, and complex passages make it a destination for only the most adventurous cavers. But for those willing to brave its depths, Papoose Cave offers a unique glimpse into Idaho's underground wilderness. On May 29, 1970, 2 young explorers, Jerry Thornton, a 25-year-old with moderate caving experience, and Joel, a 13-year-old who has no caving experience, embarked on what they thought would be an exciting exploration of one of Idaho's largest limestone caves. The pair had planned their trip with anticipation. Jerry Thornton, who had explored caves before, felt confident enough to take Joel along, even though Joel had no prior experience. They were aware that Papoose Cave, located deep in the Nez Perce National Forest, was not an easy cave to navigate. With its high elevation, cold temperatures, and complex passages, the cave presented challenges even for seasoned cavers. But despite these risks, Thornton believed they could handle it. Before setting out, they packed their gear, which included basic caving essentials like helmets, ropes, and a ladder for climbing. Thornton also carried a small amount of food and water, anticipating a relatively short trip. However, one critical mistake was the choice of clothing. Joel wore cotton clothes, cowboy boots, and a metal hard hat without a chin strap, hardly the ideal outfit for caving in such harsh conditions. Wool clothing would have been a much better choice, as it insulates well even when wet, something cotton does not do. This oversight would later contribute to the dangerous situation they found themselves in. They were both excited about the adventure ahead early in the day. The entrances to Papoose Cave, more than 5,000 feet above sea level, were as terrifying as they were inviting. By 2:30 p.m., they had reached a significant obstacle. A 40-foot pit with a waterfall running through it. The water was flowing more heavily than usual, a clear sign that conditions inside the cave were not ideal. Despite this, Thornton and Joel decided to descend the pit using the ladder they had brought along. Descending into the pit was the first major challenge. Thornton went down first, securing the ladder and making sure it was safe for Joel to follow. Joel, although nervous, managed to make it down the ladder and into the pit, where the roar of the waterfall made communication difficult. The cold, wet environment was quickly taking its toll, especially on Joel, who was not prepared for such conditions. Once at the bottom, it became clear that continuing further into the cave was too dangerous. The water was too high, and the conditions were too extreme. They decided to turn back and ascend the ladder. Thornton, with his experience, managed to climb back up without much trouble, but Joel struggled. The combination of exhaustion, fear, and the cold was overwhelming for the young caver. Despite being belayed, a safety measure where the climber is secured with a rope, Joel could not make it up the ladder. It was around 3 p.m. when the condition became critical. Thornton, realizing that Joel was in trouble, tried to help him, but there was little he could do from above. The situation was not good until, by a stroke of luck, 4 experienced cavers from the Cascade Grotto, a local chapter of the National Speleological Society, NSS, arrived at the cave. these cavers were more prepared for the conditions inside Papoose Cave. They had the right gear, proper clothing, and most importantly, the experience needed to handle such a situation. They knew that Joel was at risk of hypothermia, a life-threatening condition that occurs when the body loses heat faster than it can produce it. The first thing they did was to provide Joel with additional clothing to help warm him up. They also shared their body heat, a technique that can be crucial in preventing hypothermia in cold environments. However, despite their efforts, Joel was still unable to climb the ladder and escape the pit. By then, Thornton knew he couldn't help Joel much inside the cave, so he made the hard choice to leave the cave and get more help. He didn't leave because he didn't care, but because it was a good idea to get more people to help. Time was important, and Joel needed to be saved as soon as possible. Outside the cave, Thornton quickly encountered members of another caving group, the Zondu Grotto, also affiliated with the NSS. These cavers, who had more equipment and manpower, immediately made a new plan. They decided that instead of trying to bring Joel up the 40-feet pit using the ladder, they would utilize a nearby dry 50-feet pit that could be more easily navigated with a proper pulley system. The cavers made a special counterbalance pulley system that would help them lift Joel out of the pit more easily. This system is more effective when the person being saved is too weak to climb themselves. The cavers worked together quickly, knowing that Joel was getting worse and that any delay could be dangerous. After what must have felt like an eternity for Joel, the team successfully raised him out of the pit. Once he was at the surface, the cavers helped him out of the cave, ensuring that he was safe and warm. By midnight, everyone was out of the cave and the rescue operation was complete. This incident is warning of the dangers of caving, especially for those who are inexperienced or ill-prepared. While Jerry Thornton had some caving knowledge, it wasn't enough to foresee the complications that would arise during their trip to Papoose Cave. Joel, a novice, had no business being in such a challenging cave, especially without the right equipment or clothing. The actions of the Cascade Grotto cavers were crucial in preventing a tragedy. Their quick thinking, proper gear, and willingness to share what they had likely saved Joel from a severe case of hypothermia, or worse. The incident also highlights the importance of preparation, proper clothing, and knowing when to turn back in the face of dangerous conditions. Going caving can be a very good experience, giving you a look at parts of the world that only a few people ever see, but it also needs respect for the environment and knowing the dangers. For anyone thinking of going caving, the story of Jerry Thornton and Joel's bad experience in Papoose Cave is a strong lesson about how important it is to be ready and know your limits. Hubbard's Cave in Colorado was home to one of the most bizarre cave rescues of all time. Two families pleaded for help after two adults disappeared without a trace. Law enforcement made the unprecedented move to block rescuers from entering Hubbard's Cave for days. Later, rescuers were allowed inside, and then a fight erupted after the rescue, which sparked another investigation. The families accused the police with failing to comply with procedures, and the investigators claimed the lost cavers staged their own disappearance. Did rescuers make it in time to save the two lost cavers? Which side was right? Join us as we uncover the mysteries of the Hubbard's Cave rescue. Hubbard's Cave was named after settler William Hubbard when he and his brother-in-law Griff Jones uncovered the cave during their journey for gold in 1892. Originally, they only found a pile of boulders, but as they broke them apart, the tumbling rubble revealed a cave entrance. Hubbard and Jones searched for a better entrance, and they found an opening they could easily explore without laboring against tons of rock. Inside, the pair found campfires left by native Ute tribes. The Ute have a tradition known as the Bear Dance, which is a 10-day celebration held in March. In the past, they raced horses, gambled, and ate before and after the main event. In reverence to the bears they hunted, the Ute people gathered to dance like a bear scratching a tree, while musicians played instruments called rasps or notched sticks that mimic the sound of claws on bark. Afterward, the designated storyteller would weave interesting and allegorical tales around the campfire. Hubbard and Jones even noted that there was evidence of bears living in the cave as well. The prospectors were enchanted by the cave. They kept walking deeper as each new step revealed new cave formations and crystals they had never seen before. Eventually, they realized they were lost. In their panic, they wound their way through the labyrinth of the cave, which only worsened their situation. They nearly resigned to their fate when their hunting dog trotted into their lamplight and led them back to the surface. Today, Hubbard's Cave is located on the edge of the Glenwood Canyon on a rolling, rocky hillside dotted with pine trees overlooking the Colorado River. Another entrance was later found, giving the cave 3 different paths, and Hubbard's houses one of the largest bat populations in Colorado. For over a century since its rediscovery, Hubbard's remained open to the public, and it was a popular attraction for cavers, hikers, and partiers. Back in 2003, 54-year-old John Hayter and 49-year-old Sherry DeCrow drove into the Colorado wilderness to start their expedition into the countryside. They stopped at a trailhead parking space and started again down a long trail meant for bicycles and ATVs, though some brave hikers choose to walk the whole 9-mile trail along this route just to reach the actual trail that leads to Hubbard's. The long trail leads to a secretive quarter-mile trail marked by an outdated and unkempt sign. The last stretch is steep and rocky, which makes the journey even more challenging. John and Sherry were fit, but the hike drained them more than they realized. Their fatigue would come back to bite them, limiting their mobility and strength in the cave and causing them to make poor choices that led to disaster. The main entrance to Hubbard's is a triangular hole in the streaked rock that protrudes from the ground. The floor of the entrance is lined with sharp, jagged stones that have splinted from the cliffside or the ceilings of the cave. The ceiling dips down to resemble a dark, gaping maw ready to devour all those who dare to enter. Sherry only planned to show John the way to Hubbard's Cave, but once they reached the cold and curious void in the rock, they threw caution to the wind and ventured into the darkness. Just like Hubbard and Jones before them, the ambitious pair entered the cave, oblivious to the dangers that lay in wait below them. After their long trek, they had an easy start to the cave. Over the years, the government installed some steps, a metal tube, a support wall, and a ladder at the entrance because so many non-cavers ventured to the site. John and Sherry fit among those casual cavers who don't take spelunking seriously. They brought flashlights instead of headlamps. They had no backup lights. They wore regular athletic hiking gear, and they had no food or water. On top of all these mistakes, they then started their journey by ignoring one of the most important steps for any cave adventure. They didn't tell anyone they were going into Hubbard's Cave. Communicating the plan to others is a crucial step for anyone who wants to explore the deep tunnels below our feet. Once inside a cave, cell phones won't work. If you get stuck, injured, or lost, you're stuck relying on a chance encounter with another cave group, or you're dead. John and Sherry overestimated their abilities and thought that Hubbard's would be safe, since it was such a popular attraction. Venturing into the cave, they found the same formations that bewildered William Hubbard when he explored the cave. There were selenite needles that jabbed from the walls like strands of glass, cave hair formed by gypsum oozing out of small pores in the rock to make curly hairs or long strands of silky-looking rope, and they found many more otherworldly sights as they hiked deeper below. The pair twisted around the bends of the cave without realizing Hubbard's contains 3 major passages. Nearly 400 feet into the cave, they noticed one of their lights was flickering. They shook the flashlight and jostled the electronics around a bit like you would with an old remote. Maybe the batteries were dislodged, or there was something stuck in the contacts that jammed up the electrical current. The device looked fine, but it was pretty old. Most people have flashlights for convenience, not for emergencies. Flashlights are rarely replaced, and few people fork out the money for a quality device. One of them realized how old the flashlight was after noticing the once clear plastic was slightly yellow from sunlight exposure. Then, the flashlight completely turned off. For once on this unfortunate adventure, they made the right call and turned around to go back to the safety of the forest above. As they walked through the narrow archways and over slippery ground, the other would-be caver nervously laughed and mentioned their flashlight was also old. They said They'd buy a new one later and offer to go shopping together. But roughly halfway back, they realized their light was dimming. Then, a familiar sight made their hearts sink and their stomachs turn. Their last remaining torch began to flicker. With one last flare, their only remaining light source was extinguished. Once more, they made a sound decision to remain stationary and pray for help. When Sherry didn't return home that night, no one seemed to notice. She was an adult, and she could come and go as she pleased. But 2 days after the pair went missing, her family, the DeCrows, tried to contact her. They only got her voicemail. They tried her home, but she wasn't there either. Sherry's daughter, Ramia, convened with the rest of the family to discuss her mother's absence. Some thought she might have skipped town to marry her friend John, but others were afraid something terrible had happened to her. That night, they submitted a missing persons report to the Garfield County Sheriff's Department. Now, some members of her family thought her ex-husband could be to blame, so the police investigated him. The family suggested her ex was violent, and fear quickly spread about what he could have done to her. Of course, her ex-husband was a dead end, and he had alibis for the night of her disappearance. Knowing that Sherry would sometimes explore the outdoors, the Air National Guard ran a helicopter sweep of the river and other water sources to search for her body. This search turned up no results, and it also failed to find their vehicle, which was still parked at the trailhead. That's when the DeCrows started to butt heads with the police. They thought the investigators didn't do a thorough job, so they recruited a family friend to fly his personal plane in search for any signs of Sherry. After only 30 minutes in the air, this independent pilot found her Suburban parked at the trail in the Colorado wilderness. This spot and its connection to Hubbard's has been popular for over 100 years. The family immediately knew what happened, but they couldn't convince the police. In their eyes, deputies and others involved in the search should have immediately connected the dots that Sherry could have been inside Hubbard's cave. But instead of calling a rescue team, they taped off the parking lot as a possible crime scene. After far too long, days after Sherry and John got lost, a canine unit led police to Hubbard's cave. Reports suggest that the police had no idea how to proceed. They called for Sherry down the cold stone steps of the cave and shined their lights into the darkness, but they didn't venture inside. To make matters worse, they still didn't call a cave rescue team. Sherry's son and daughter said they would search the cave themselves and recruit cavers to guide them to find their mother. The chances of finding her alive continued to plummet every second. They knew she was inside and they needed to act immediately, but the police refused to grant entry into Hubbard's because of the already debunked fears about her ex and the possibility of foul play which could endanger the lives of anyone entering the cave. Since it was considered a crime scene, they wouldn't allow anyone to potentially tamper with evidence, even though they could have escorted the rescuers to ensure they complied with procedures. The two camps argued until a thunderstorm rolled over the mountains and valleys of the area and the police disbanded the search party. Inside the cave, John and Sherry were struggling. The cold was numbing their rattling fingers and the darkness was messing with their heads. At first, they thought about what they would do when they got out, but by the third day, they were crushed by hopelessness. Temperatures in Hubbard's cave dropped to as low as 3 degrees above freezing. Then, as the storm came through, rain started to trickle down overhead and little streams snaked over their shoes. They didn't see the water coming in the absolute darkness of the cave, and now they had to face the cold with wet clothes. But at least these muddy drops of water could keep them alive, for now. Like her family, Sherry even wondered if her vindictive husband could be to blame for their misfortune. John also had an angry ex. Did their divorced partners collude to sabotage their batteries on purpose? The thought struck fear into them. What if their exes were waiting outside? And what were they planning to do with them? Beyond fear and the cold, the pair also faced other challenges inside the tunnels. Hubbard's cave is at an elevation of 8,400 feet. Outside, the air is thinner and oxygen content is lower. It takes travelers days or weeks to adjust to the dry and thin atmosphere. They were used to it, but the body can only handle so much, and the oxygen inside the cave was even lower. They sat stationary, sucking all the fresh air from their surroundings. On top of all their other problems, the pair was slowly being poisoned by their own stagnant breath. By day 4, John was in bad shape. The two couldn't see how ragged they looked in the pitch blackness of the cave, but John's starvation and slow asphyxiation were becoming unbearable. If help didn't arrive soon, Hubbard's cave would become John's tomb. The thunderstorm battered the land for what felt like an eternity. The whole time, the DeCrows battled against the police to return and perform a rescue operation. Finally, after 4.5 days of Sherry's disappearance, police let the family and their team enter the cave. Of course, the police, who delayed the rescue for almost a week, sat outside. Even as the police watched people who had no idea how to properly explore caves enter the dark reaches of Hubbard's, they still didn't call an official rescue squad to aid them. The brave DeCrows weren't official rescuers. They had no gear. They lacked all the training cave rescuers dedicate their lives to learning and perfecting. But that day, they became rescuers. Armed with only crude flashlights and determination to find their missing family members, the team located Sherry and John only minutes after entering the cave. Because the group found Sherry so easily after entering the cave, that proved to the DeCrows that the police didn't even try to find her. After being gaslit for almost a week, the tension escalated into a fight between the police and the DeCrows. Allegedly, a detective choked one of the volunteers who joined the DeCrows to find the lost cavers. People on both sides held back the more aggressive members of each group, and eventually the threat of charges simmered the upset family members while John and Sherry were evaluated by medics. They were both exhausted and dehydrated. Their families explained the situation from their perspectives, which disgusted the fearful and shivering cavers. The medics noted they were weak and dehydrated, but they gave Sherry and John the choice to get hospitalized or return home. After seeing the fervor of their families, they opted to go home with them instead of traveling with emergency personnel. Home was a long way off, so the group stopped at a hotel to recover from the harrowing incident. It was later revealed that the sheriff never alerted local media outlets about Sherry's disappearance. The sheriff denied the cave rescue because he thought it could be a crime scene. But if that's the case, then why did he ignore a major component of a missing person's case? If he had given the public info on her car, it's likely that cavers or hikers would have found her Suburban the very next day after they went missing. The allegations of a detective choking a volunteer rescue were investigated by the Colorado Bureau of Investigations, and word spread throughout the nearby towns. Further adding fuel to the fire, the police insinuated that John and Sherry staged their rescue, despite the visible and medical evidence that they were battered and succumbing to exposure. The sheriff based his claim off of the inconclusive missing persons search, which involved members of the FBI. Sources indicate the team never properly explored the cave, which invalidates the validity of the search. His claim also relies on the medical evaluation that said the pair were fine, but the evidence seems to suggest the sheriff simply misunderstood the medic's evaluation. The medics have an obligation to prevent medical deterioration, but if John and Sherry got fluids, food, and rest, they should be fine. After seeing the tension between both groups, the medics could have made the call out of pity for Sherry and John. If they were sent to the hospital, they would be subjected to interviews from the police, which would only make them more upset. However, on the other hand, if Sherry and John got worse after leaving, the medics would be responsible for their condition. The medics would also be putting their necks on the line to lie to police. But from the reports, it seems like that the cavers and the police could have made mistakes, so it's also possible the medics dropped the ball as well. And in what seems like one final admission of incompetence, the sheriff said he knew the contact information of multiple Colorado cave rescue teams and the procedures for cave rescues, but in spite of the dogs leading them straight to Hubbard's, the sheriff claimed that he had, and I'm quoting, "no reason to presume John and Sherry were lost in a cave," end quote. The sheriff also said he still believed in his method and that he'd do it the same way again. Both the cavers and the sheriff highlight how ignorance can easily become the death of anyone daring to explore underground caves. If John and Sherry knew the dangers and prepared accordingly, they probably would have been fine. And if the sheriff really understood cave rescues, his decisions could have been different and the pair could have been saved much faster. But, as the DeCrows and the volunteers showed, you don't have to be a professional to be a hero when it counts. The Hubbard's cave story is a wild oddity in the world of cave rescues. What do you think? Is there ever a good reason to avoid calling rescuers? Have you ever wondered what it would be like to explore the hidden depths of a mysterious cave far beneath the Earth's surface? What dangers lurk in the darkness? What challenges would you face when things go wrong? In this video, we follow a group of 5 explorers who enter the vast and treacherous Fitton Cave in Arkansas, led by 2 seasoned cavers. But what begins as an exciting adventure soon takes a dramatic and unexpected turn. Deep underground, far from help, the group faces a situation that no one could have anticipated. Will they make it out unscathed, or does the cave hold a darker fate? Let's find out what happens next in this thrilling tale of cave exploration. Cave exploration, caving, or spelunking, is the thrilling activity of discovering and navigating the hidden worlds beneath the Earth's surface. Caves offer a unique opportunity to explore places that have been formed over thousands or even millions of years. These underground landscapes are full of fascinating features, from towering stalagmites and dripping stalactites to sparkling mineral formations and underground rivers. Each cave has its own distinct beauty and challenges, making every exploration a new adventure. One of the most exciting parts of caving is the sense of mystery and discovery. Many caves are still relatively unexplored, and stepping into one can feel like entering a forgotten world. The quiet, dark atmosphere, combined with the stunning natural formations, creates a surreal experience. For those who love adventure, caving offers both mental and physical challenges. Navigating narrow passages, climbing steep rock walls, and working together as a team to overcome obstacles are all part of the experience. Caves are also home to a wide range of wildlife, many of which have adapted to live in the darkness. Bats, salamanders, and strange eyeless fish are just a few of the creatures you might encounter while exploring. Cave environments are delicate and fragile, so it's important to follow safety and conservation guidelines to protect both the explorers and the cave itself. Whether you are a seasoned caver or new to the adventure, cave exploration offers an unforgettable experience that connects you with the hidden wonders of the Earth. Welcome to Fitton Cave, one of the largest and most fascinating cave systems in Arkansas. Located within the Buffalo National River area, this massive cave is known for its stunning and rare formations, making it a true treasure for cave enthusiasts. Fitton Cave is not only the longest cave in Arkansas, but also the second most biologically diverse in the state. It's home to unique creatures and awe-inspiring geological features that have formed over thousands of years. Unfortunately, like all caves in the Buffalo National River area, Fitton Cave is currently closed to the public. This closure is due to a deadly fungus known as white nose syndrome, which can be devastating to bat populations. Bats are essential for the cave's ecosystem, and this disease has caused a rapid decline in their numbers. The fungus can spread easily, especially by people entering and exiting caves, so access has been restricted to protect these vital creatures. Now, despite this, the beauty of Fitton Cave's interior is well documented. The cave boasts impressive gypsum formations, including massive gypsum flowers and delicate needle-like structures that sparkle under light. Visitors in the past have also marveled at the so-called angel hair and intricate pendants that hang from the cave ceiling. Some of the most breathtaking sights include cascading flowstone waterfalls and other brilliant crystalline formations made of calcite. As you explore the cave, you'll notice how it supports a variety of life forms. The cave environment, although dark and damp, provides a habitat for unusual organisms. These creatures often have specialized adaptations that allow them to thrive in the cave's unique conditions, such as having enhanced senses and longer lifespans than their above-ground counterparts. At the cave's entrance, warm, humid air escapes, creating a noticeable breeze as you approach. A short walk from the trailhead leads to the massive entrance room, which is about the size of a football field. This grand chamber is filled with formations, some of which are no longer active, but still hold a haunting beauty. One notable formation is the missile silo, a tall column about 20 feet high that extends from the floor to the ceiling. As you move forward into the cave, you'll encounter the manhole, a small, slick opening that requires careful navigation. The manhole is known for being a spot where accidents can happen, so extra care is needed when climbing through it. Once through, you'll reach the tea room, where a small stream flows, and you might even spot a salamander or two. One of the most remarkable sections is the out room, a large space unevenly filled with rock breakdown, making it a challenge to find the exit. After climbing up a steep slope of rocks, you'll reach the roundhouse room, a truly gigantic chamber that marks one of the cave's most impressive sights. Fitton Cave is a hidden wonder beneath Arkansas's landscape, filled with natural beauty and biological diversity. Though currently off-limits, its history and magnificent formations continue to inspire awe and curiosity for adventurers and cave enthusiasts alike. On November 23rd, 1984, a group of 5 eager cavers set out to explore the depths of Fitton Cave in Arkansas. Leading the group were Mark and Charlotte Stock, 2 highly experienced cavers known for their expertise in navigating challenging cave systems. Both had spent years exploring various caves across the country, making them the perfect leaders for this adventure. The other 3 members of the group had varying levels of caving experience, ranging from several years to almost no experience at all. This mixture of seasoned adventurers and newcomers set the stage for a journey that would push their limits both physically and mentally. The group's destination was the Tenori Room, a famous chamber within Fitton Cave known for its impressive formations and the surrounding walking passages. Everyone in the group was excited, especially the less experienced cavers, who saw this as a chance to gain valuable experience. Mark and Charlotte had carefully planned the trip, making sure that everyone had the right equipment and also understood the challenges they might face. The preparation included safety gear, food, water, headlamps, and extra batteries, ensuring that they were ready for any situation. From the moment they entered the cave, the atmosphere was filled with excitement. The less experienced cavers were buzzing with anticipation, excited to see what lay ahead. The idea of going deep into a cave system, navigating through narrow passages, and exploring vast underground chambers filled them with a sense of adventure. The more experienced members, like Mark and Charlotte, were equally excited, though they had a calm, focused demeanor that comes with years of caving experience. Before they began the exploration, the group took some time to go over the plan. Mark and Charlotte made sure that everyone knew the route they would be taking and emphasized the importance of staying together. They also discussed safety procedures, including what to do in case of an injury or an emergency. This level of preparation was crucial, as caves can be unpredictable, with slippery surfaces, tight spaces, and unseen hazards lurking around every corner. The journey started off smoothly, and the group moved through the initial passages without much trouble. The cave was dark and humid, with the occasional sound of water dripping echoing through the chambers. As they ventured deeper into Fitton Cave, the passages became more challenging, requiring the group to climb over rocks and navigate narrow gaps. The excitement among the group members continued to grow, especially for the newcomers who were experiencing the thrill of caving for the first time. After several hours of exploring, some of the less experienced cavers began to tire. Although the adventure was exciting, the physical demands of climbing and maneuvering through the cave were starting to take a toll. Mark and Charlotte, ever the careful leaders, decided that it was time to start heading back to the entrance. They wanted to ensure that everyone made it out safely and without overexerting themselves. In an effort to build the confidence of the less experienced members, Mark and Charlotte allowed them to take the lead during the journey back. This decision gave the newcomers a sense of responsibility and an opportunity to practice their navigation skills. During one of their rest stops, the group engaged in a conversation about cave rescues. The experienced members, Mark and Charlotte, explained how difficult and dangerous rescues can be in deep and complex cave systems. They even touched upon the grim topic of flat rocking, an extreme and controversial idea where, in some particularly challenging cases, it might be easier to dispatch an injured person than to attempt a near impossible rescue. Just 10 minutes after this conversation, the unexpected happened. Steve Tkach, a 30-year-old member of the group, was climbing a steep flowstone slope when he suddenly slipped. The wet, slick surface of the slope caused him to lose his footing, and before he knew it, he was sliding down at a dangerous speed. As he tumbled, his ankle twisted, and he was caught on a rock projection, bringing his fall to an abrupt and painful stop. The group rushed to Steve's side, worried about the seriousness of his injury. Steve insisted that he was okay, but it was clear from his expression and the way that he was holding his ankle that something was seriously wrong. Despite his obvious pain, Steve tried to stand up and continue on his own, refusing help from his fellow cavers. This reaction wasn't uncommon. There is a tendency for injured people to deny the seriousness of their injuries, perhaps out of fear or shock. Steve, determined not to slow the group down, was adamant that he could make it out on his own. Mark and Charlotte, knowing how dangerous this situation could become, told the group to stop and reassess. They knew that Steve's injury, if left untreated, could worsen. They also understood the risks of navigating the rest of the cave with an injured ankle. The group discussed their options. Despite Steve's insistence that he could continue, it was clear that some sort of support was needed. They quickly improvised a solution by tying a strap from a cave pack around his ankle to give it some stability. Steve, though still in pain, agreed to this temporary fix and was allowed to continue moving under his own power, albeit slowly. The journey back to the entrance became far more challenging with Steve's injury. What had been a fun and exciting adventure now turned into a tense and cautious retreat. The rest of the group had to stay close to Steve, helping him over obstacles and making sure that he didn't put too much weight on his injured ankle. The pace was slow, but they were making progress. As the hours passed, the situation became more serious. Steve's pain was increasing, and the makeshift strap was no longer providing enough support. Mark and Charlotte realized that they needed to step up their efforts to get him out as quickly and safely as possible. They decided to split the group, with Mark leading the others to go ahead and alert rescuers, while Charlotte stayed with Steve to ensure that he didn't aggravate his injury further. The cave environment, with its tight spaces and uneven terrain, made the rescue effort all the more difficult. Moving Steve through some of the narrower sections was slow and required careful planning. However, the group's teamwork and Mark and Charlotte's leadership made a difference. They worked together to support Steve, and after what felt like an eternity, they finally reached the entrance of the cave. Once outside, they were able to call for medical help. Steve was taken to a nearby hospital where it was confirmed that his ankle was severely injured. The fall had caused multiple torn ligaments, and surgery was required to set the bones and install steel pins. Steve spent the next 9 weeks in a cast recovering from the injury. Now, looking back at the incident, it was clear that Steve's initial denial of his injury could have made things worse. If the group had not insisted on stopping and supporting him, his attempt to walk on his broken ankle might have caused further damage. This situation showed the importance of not only physical preparation, but also mental readiness when it comes to cave exploration. Injuries can happen at any time, and it is important to take them seriously, no matter how small they may seem. In the end, the group's adventure in Fitton Cave turned out to be more than just an exploration of beautiful underground passages. It became a lesson in teamwork, safety, and the unpredictable nature of caving. Thanks to the quick thinking and experience of Mark and Charlotte, as well as the determination of the entire group, a potentially disastrous situation was managed, and everyone made it out of the cave safely. As we conclude this incredible cave exploration story, we are reminded of the unpredictable nature of caving and the importance of teamwork and preparation. The adventure inside Fitton Cave was thrilling and challenging, showing both the beauty and danger of exploring underground. It was a journey full of excitement, unexpected twists, and valuable lessons about safety. Back in 1966, a group of young Boy Scouts ventured into the easily accessible Howard's Waterfall cave. The troop used the fire of lanterns to guide their path as they trekked bravely into the darkness, not knowing the dark secrets this cave concealed. Their adventure turned disastrous when a sudden explosion blasted the cave apart. This is the story of the celebrated rescuers, the survivors, and the mourned losses of Howard's Waterfall Cave. The curiosity of Howard's Waterfall Cave. Trenton is a small town nestled in the northwestern corner of the state of Georgia. Trenton was originally dubbed Salem, Georgia, until a mining company came and renamed the town while gathering precious coal from the ground. The caves near Trenton, both natural and man-made, were used by both sides during the Civil War. Small towns caught in the crossfire would flee underground during battles, and some of these rocky havens, like the Smolin Cave in Missouri, were even used by Union spies to meet and share critical information. The town of Trenton is still stuck in its controversial past, and it's gained more infamy from the tragedies in its nearby caves. Trenton's rural lifestyle was the perfect place for a chapter of the Boy Scouts of America. The scouting organization reworked classic military training handbooks to teach kids the values of independence, leadership, and nature. Hiking and camping are the bread and butter of the Scouts. One day, a kid from the local chapter turned toward the sound of running water during a hike in the woods. He ventured off on his own and saw water splashing from the stone canopy of Howard's Waterfall Cave. He brought the rest of the group over to look, and they could tell that the darkness beneath the waterfall continued onward. He was eager to explore it right away, but the scout leader took command of the situation and sent the boys back toward their camp. Gossip spread as the boys imagined what secrets lay beneath the waterfall. The scout leader of the area thought it would be a great idea to take the troop down into the cave. He knew the cave was mostly open space with no real dangers for the first few hundred feet. They could easily explore down to the real challenging areas to teach the kids a lesson on the dangers of the cave, whilst also showing the wonders of the rocky depths. 27-year-old scout veteran Phil Howell would guide the group into the cave. The group departed to one of the 5 entrances of Howard's Waterfall Cave. There, they began their journey by leaving the roadside and hiking through the wilderness. The first 100 feet of the cave is a breeze, but then the group got to the first hazard, a 20-foot drop. Phil reminded the boys how to descend the rock, demonstrated the climb, and waited at the bottom in case anyone fell. They each got past the area with no problems. The next section was a sprawling maze that cavers easily got lost inside of. The scouts had a difficult time with the section since they didn't have modern equipment. There were few maps of the cave back then, and any gear they had was primitive at best. The boys were using carbide lamps that use active flames to light their path. These old-timey lamps could be worn on mining helmets or held in the hand. The flames cast dancing shadows across the smooth speleoforms around the cave, which made it difficult for the group to find the turn they needed to make. Lingering in this section, the group started coughing as they searched. Phil noticed the smoke from their lamps could be building up, so he fanned the air with his hand as they searched. Eventually, they found the pathway and ventured further into the cave. As they were walking, some of the boys complained about dizziness. Others were getting headaches. Phil was concerned, but he thought the dim lights could be impacting the kids. The cave was slightly damp from seasonal rainfall, which eased Phil's concerns. If any of them tripped, The waters would make it hard for fire to spread from a broken lamp. The group reached a large room with smooth, rounded walls and marveled at the cave and its layers of multicolored rock. They pushed onward to a canyon that descended further than the first dip. They stayed on the ledge, but one of the boys got dizzy. Another scout grabbed his arm to stabilize him. Phil turned around, tense and ready to spring into action, but the boy was safely pulled away from the ledge. Phil brought him to the front of the pack to keep an eye on him. Some of the boys were breathing heavily as they got to a room with strange writing on the walls. Phil explained that Howard's Waterfall Cave was a sacred place for Cherokee natives in the area. Their legends told that caves were portals to a hellish underworld. Few members of the various Cherokee clans dared to venture into the cave, but those who did felt empowered after overcoming the dangers of Earth's depths. Whenever brave souls did journey into Howard's, they left their signatures and messages along the cave walls. In his master's degree thesis, anthropologist Bo Carroll compared these signatures to the graffiti present in the cave today. Only these old markings weren't full of harmful chemicals that could destroy the rare species of insects and other creatures living in the cave. Phil's tale inspired the boys, and they all wanted to leave their own messages along the wall to show they had conquered the cave. The old markings in this room were made in the syllabary language of the Cherokee. Along with signatures, Howard's Waterfall Cave had a message scrawled on its walls. This message was written by a man named Goose, whose writings appear on different caves across Georgia. The message looming above the Boy Scouts roughly says, quote, "We found them and split them among us, taking back what was ours. Even after the United States outlawed Cherokee laws, Goose and his clanmates avenged the deaths of their fellow tribe members by evoking their own blood law. To balance their losses, they killed 3 people and possibly disposed of their scalped bodies somewhere in Howard's Waterfall Cave." The group had no idea what these mysterious markings meant at the time, but as they gazed at the rock, the letters started to move as their vision began to blur. On the way back, they started to feel exhausted, and they were breathing more heavily and faster. Their pulses started to quicken, which only led to more fear and anxiety. Phil was experiencing it too, and he wasn't sure why his heart rate was going up. The cave wasn't challenging, and they weren't struggling physically outside of these strange effects. They kept walking, feeling the blood pulse in their ears. They reached the round-walled room near the maze area when they noticed it, a strange smell starting to fill the air. Phil immediately covered his face and warned the kids to back up, waving his other arm. He feared that the group had already been exposed to carbon dioxide gases or other deadly fumes from below ground. The carbide lamps they carried used acetylene gas to fuel their flames. These lamps are sometimes called smokers because they produce dark plumes of carbon that fog up the air around them. Along with the flame, burning acetylene also produces 2 parts carbon dioxide to 1 part water vapor. CO2 is deadly, but it's also colorless and odorless. Other culprits could be carbon monoxide or flammable methane. These chemicals can often be found in mines where the exhaust from heavy machinery builds up. Sometimes in lava caves, hydrogen sulfide gas can waft from burning sulfur deep underground, creating the rotten egg smell found around many hot springs. But the area had no known volcanic activity. Phil was considering the possibilities, thinking about what to do, when the cave made the decision for him. A ball of fire engulfed the back of the group. An explosion shook the earth, and a shockwave sent Phil and the boys flying off their feet and into the walls of the cave. Fire consumed some of the boys. After the initial blast, the rumble of a cave-in sounded in front of them, battering their ears and stinging their eyes with dust. Rescue in the Cherokee underworld. The whole town heard the blast. It reverberated for miles across the Georgia wilderness, sending birds into the sky. One of the town's residents, Rusty Mills, was only 18 when he heard the explosion, but he was one of the town's biggest cavers. The Boy Scouts trapped in Howard's Waterfall cave were the same age he was when he found his love of caving. He had ventured up into Tennessee and braved many of the caves in the area, so he knew Howard's like the back of his hand. Rusty's pal, Bernie Gilly, was also a young adult, just 1 year older than Rusty. Rusty found Bernie congregating in the town square. The families of the scouts knew their boys were below ground, and smoke and dirt were rising from the direction of Howard's Waterfall cave. Mothers shrieked as firefighters, police, and medics all rallied toward the cave. Rusty and Bernie pulled up their sleeves and chased after them. Phil's vision was blurry, but he stumbled to his feet in spite of his daze. One boy's clothing was on fire. A few others were lying on the ground, not moving. Some were bleeding and had signs of bone injuries. Phil himself grasped his side. The pain in his chest signaled a broken rib, but he stumbled forward and slapped the fire with his arm, while helping the boy roll on the floor to extinguish the fire. Many of the lights were burnt out. The boy near the back of the room had suffered the brunt of the impact. He was a 16-year-old with more maturity than the younger group members, so he was tasked with being the last person in line to keep an eye on his fellow scouts. His brass-colored headlamp was now black, and only twisted scraps of it were left strewn about the room. Phil saw shards of glass had impaled another boy that was close to him. Without thinking, he knew the boy's lamp must have exploded. He didn't know how, and he didn't care why. He had to get the boys out of the cave. But as he turned back around, he saw the exit was buried under tons of rubble. There wasn't much light left in the cave after many of them had broken their lamps. Phil realized the acetylene gas could spark another fireball, so he frantically thought about what to do. The smell was returning to the room, and even though the explosion started in the back, the smell was worse near the rubble. So he took a chance, and he placed the few remaining lamps outside of the room, and commanded some of the boys to move beyond the room while he tried to pick up unconscious scouts. All the while, he struggled to breathe from his injuries and the nauseous air. Phil then started digging through the rock, but he didn't get far. Whatever was bothering them before was thick in the air near the rubble, and the fire had burned away most of the clean air in this pocket. In place of oxygen, the gas from their broken lamps now filled their lungs. Rusty and Bernie could smell the air before they even got into the cave. It didn't smell like a foul air cave or like burning lamps. It smelled like gasoline. The fire department wasn't equipped to provide all the rescuers with protection from the toxic fumes, so much of the crew decided to stay outside. They contemplated what to do. Only a few people could enter the cave, and that might not be enough. Who knows if they were still alive? And how many more could die if they risked it without gas masks? Rusty and Bernie were already shirtless. They dipped their shirts in the waterfall outside the cave and tied them around their faces. Hopefully, the water would absorb some of the chemicals, and they could avoid succumbing to the gas that had tainted the air of Howard's Waterfall cave. The few rescuers brave enough to go inside rushed past the first few areas. Rusty had no trouble finding the tricky left turn that stopped the scouts earlier. They were already coughing and feeling lightheaded when they found the mound of rubble. They communicated to Phil on the other side and confirmed that they were all still alive, but one of the boys wasn't doing very well. It seemed like one of his lamps had exploded. The firefighters told them to turn off all lights, and they did the same. The pair of about 4 people, including Rusty and Bernie, started digging through the rubble in total darkness. They were quickly able to get a small hole open through the rock, and they cautiously turned a light back on to assess the situation in what's now known as the disaster room. Phil was still barely conscious on the other side as he flailed his arms trying to grab and move rocks, but his body was going limp. Bernie quickly reached across the small opening and gave Phil his shirt to shield him with whatever sliver of protection it could bring. Hours passed by as the teams worked, with the fire crew on the left side of the cave-in, Rusty in the middle, and Bernie on the right. As they kept shoving stones tumbling down to the cave floor, Rusty noticed the sounds were getting quieter on one side. He turned his lamp on and saw Bernie gasping for breath. As Rusty put a hand on his friend's shoulder, the fireman called to them. With just one more boulder, they could start getting the Boy Scouts out of the room one at a time. Bernie rose on shaky legs and joined with the other rescuers. The two firefighters, Rusty and Bernie, all pushed their whole might into the side of the rock. The boulder gave way, and Phil dragged himself to the first scout and helped him through the jagged opening in the rubble. The first firefighter scooped him up and made a dash for the exit. Bernie collapsed on the rubble. Rusty knelt down and helped move Bernie off the mound of rock to continue digging. They couldn't bring him out right now, he was too heavy. They thought they could help him later, but they had to dig faster or they'd succumb to the gas too, and all would be lost. Phil had also collapsed on the other side. The remaining rescuers had to get the hole big enough to climb through. Rusty was smaller, more wiry, and agile from his days of caving, so once the hole was big enough, he squeezed through and brought the boys through the hole. Once the final scout was on the other side, Rusty turned toward Phil. His vision was darkening, but he knelt down beside the group leader. Phil was already gone. He started to squeeze through the crack once again, but other rocks had dislodged, which made the opening too small for him to pass through. Both firefighters were gone, struggling to get the boys out. Rusty pulled all his remaining might as his head and heart felt like they were about to explode. He dislodged one more rock and tumbled down the other side. He found Bernie stiff and motionless where he left him. With tears in his eyes, Rusty tried to move to the exit, but his legs turned to rubber and he fell on his face. Outside, the firefighters were getting oxygen to the boys as they tried to catch their own breath. They turned around and went back into the cave. The chamber of the cave was oddly quiet when they got there. They saw Rusty lying face down near the rock pile with a deep red pool of blood cascading from under him. He was still alive, but barely. The rescuers found Bernie and wormed through the hole to Phil. They shouldered Rusty together and departed the cave. Once they got outside, they laid Rusty on the grass. He wasn't breathing. They tried CPR, but it was no use. The scouts were saved, but their troop leader Phil Howell and two of the young rescue crew, Rusty Mills and Bernie Gilly, had all given up their lives to save them. Later discoveries revealed a nearby gas station developed a leak in their underground gas tank. Toxic fumes evaporated and seeped into the cave, just above the disaster room. Today, Howard's Waterfall Cave is managed by the Southeastern Cave Conservancy Incorporated, or the SCCI. It was the first cave donated to the group, and since then, they've grown to manage nearly 180 caves across 7 states. The Mills family donated Rusty's cave notes to the SCCI, and they revealed that Rusty had recently found a brand new sinkhole cave before he died. To honor his memory, the SCCI named the new pit Rusty's Cave in his honor. Have you ever wondered what mysteries lie hidden beneath the ocean's surface? Imagine exploring the dark, twisting caves beneath the waves, where every turn could lead to either an amazing discovery or a dangerous trap. On December 23, 1984, a group of 6 brave divers set out to explore the Blowhole cave off the coast of Oahu, Hawaii. But when one diver suddenly disappears, the adventure takes a terrifying turn. What happened deep inside that cave? How did a simple dive become a race against time? Join us as we uncover the chilling events that unfolded beneath the surface, where the ocean's beauty hides its darkest secrets. Blowhole Cave is a fascinating rock formation located on the island of Oahu, Hawaii, near Hanauma Bay at Halona Point. The name Halona comes from the Hawaiian word meaning lookout, which is fitting for the stunning views of the Pacific Ocean that the site offers. This natural wonder is a popular spot for tourists who visit to witness the spectacular blowhole in action, enjoy the nearby beach, and occasionally spot humpback whales or Hawaiian green sea turtles, known as honu, during the winter months. However, the real attraction of this area is the Blowhole, which shoots sea spray high into the air, mimicking a geyser. The formation of the Blowhole cave began thousands of years ago during a period of intense volcanic activity in Oahu. Lava from Koko Crater flowed into the ocean, creating intricate tunnels and tubes beneath the surface. These lava tubes extend deep into the ocean, narrowing as they rise toward the surface. When the tide is high and the winds are strong, waves crash into the shore, sending water into the narrow openings of the rock. This pressure builds up, forcing the water and air out through the blowhole, creating a spectacular burst of sea spray that can shoot up to 30 feet into the air. The best time to witness the blowhole at its most active is during high tide, when the ocean's force is strong. The sound of the water being forced through the narrow lava tubes can be quite dramatic, echoing through the area like thunder. On particularly windy days, the spray is even more impressive, making the Blowhole Cave a must-see destination for anyone visiting Oahu. Blowhole Cave is not just about the blowhole itself, though. The area around it offers much to explore. Halona Cave, known locally as Cockroach Cave, is a small, sandy beach nestled close to the blowhole. This cove is a favorite spot for both tourists and locals, especially when the surf is calm, making it ideal for swimming and relaxing. The cove's crystal clear waters and picturesque surroundings make it a perfect place to unwind after witnessing the natural spectacle of the blowhole. Just next to Halona Cave lies a reef covered in Sinularia leather coral, creating a vibrant underwater ecosystem. The reef is home to various marine life, including echinoderms, colorful slugs, eels, and different species of coral. The presence of such rich biodiversity makes this area a paradise for snorkeling and diving enthusiasts who want to explore the underwater world and witness the beauty of Hawaiian marine life up close. For cave explorers, Blowhole Cave presents a unique adventure. Although it is not a traditional cave in the sense of dark, enclosed spaces, the lava tubes that extend into the ocean offer a thrilling exploration experience. These tubes are the result of ancient volcanic activity, where molten lava flowed toward the sea, cooling and solidifying to form intricate tunnels beneath the surface. Now, while some of these lava tubes are submerged, others remain accessible, providing explorers with the chance to investigate these ancient pathways carved by nature. Cave exploration in this area requires careful planning and preparation. The ocean currents near the blowhole can be strong, and the terrain around the cave is rugged and slippery due to the constant presence of sea spray. Explorers need to be cautious and well prepared, ensuring that they have the right equipment and knowledge of the tides. The narrow passages of the lava tubes, combined with the force of the waves, can make exploration challenging but also incredibly rewarding for those looking for a unique adventure. Moreover, Blowhole Cave holds cultural significance for the Hawaiian people. The entire area of Halona Point has deep ties to Hawaiian history and mythology. For generations, locals have considered this place sacred, a reminder of the island's volcanic origins and the raw power of nature. The blowhole itself serves as a powerful symbol of the ocean's strength, and many visitors come not just to see the natural wonder, but to experience the connection to the land and sea that the area represents. Blowhole Cave is more than just a tourist spot. It is a place where natural beauty, adventure, and cultural history all come together. Whether you're there to witness the blowhole's spectacular display, relax on the sandy shores of Halona Cave, or explore the lava tubes beneath the surface, Blowhole Cave offers something for everyone. It's a must-see destination for anyone visiting Oahu. And for cave explorers, it presents a unique and thrilling challenge that is sure to leave a lasting impression. Cave diving is a dangerous but exhilarating activity. The divers had spent months preparing for this particular dive. They trained rigorously, ensuring their scuba gear was in top condition, practicing their breathing techniques, and learning to navigate the dark, narrow passages of underwater caves. In the cold morning of December 23, 1984, a group of 6 divers set out on what was meant to be an exciting underwater adventure near the blowhole on the coast of Oahu, Hawaii. These divers, including Sue Turner, a 21-year-old thrill-seeker, were drawn to the area by the promise of exploring the mysterious caves hidden beneath the surface of the Pacific Ocean. For them, cave diving wasn't just a sport. It was a way to escape the ordinary and experience the untamed beauty of nature in a way that few others could. The allure of the ocean's depths, the excitement of venturing into uncharted territories, and the challenge of pushing their limits drove these divers to the Blowhole cave that day. Sue Turner, the youngest of the group, had only recently developed a love for diving. She had been diving for a little over a year and had already built a reputation for her adventurous spirit. Although still gaining experience, she was confident, eager, and perhaps a little overzealous. Like many cave divers, Sue was drawn to the thrill of the unknown. The caves near the Blowhole were famous for their treacherous conditions, with their narrow passages and strong currents, making them suitable only for experienced divers. Well, despite the risks, the group, including Sue, was excited to explore the area. On the morning of December 23rd, the group gathered their equipment and began discussing their plan for the day. They were aware of the potential hazards of the Blowhole cave, having heard stories of the dangers that lurk below the surface. But they were confident in their skills and excited to begin their dive. They checked their scuba tanks, regulators, buoyancy vests, and weight belts, ensuring that everything was in perfect working order. Excitement filled the air as they set out to explore the caves that had captured their imaginations. As they descended into the water, the beauty of the underwater world unfolded before them. The water was clear, revealing the vibrant coral reefs and marine life that called the area home. The group swam together, communicating through hand signals as they went deeper into the caves. The caves themselves were awe-inspiring, with narrow tunnels leading into larger chambers. The thrill of discovery kept the divers focused, but they were always mindful of the risks that came with cave diving. Sue, however, seemed particularly taken by the experience. As the group explored deeper into the cave system, she began to stray from the others. Perhaps it was the excitement of the moment, or perhaps it was a simple mistake, but Sue soon found herself separated from her companions. The strong currents near the Blowhole cave made it difficult for her to return to the group, and she was swept further into the cave. As the minutes passed, the group realized that Sue was missing. Panic began to set in as they searched the nearby area, signaling to each other in a desperate attempt to locate her. They knew that time was of the essence, and the dangers of the cave became more apparent with each passing second. The strong currents and narrow passages made it difficult to navigate, and they feared that Sue had ventured too far into the cave to return safely. After what felt like a very long time, the group came up to the surface and called for help. A search was immediately launched, involving local authorities, the Coast Guard, and a helicopter crew. The search area was vast, with cliffs and underwater caves making the rescue mission even more challenging. The helicopter crew began scanning the waters below, hoping to find any sign of Sue. At 3:30 p.m., their search paid off. Sue's scuba tank, regulator, and buoyancy vest were found floating off the cliffs below the Makapu lighthouse, about half a mile from where she had last been seen. The discovery raised more questions than answers. Why had Sue discarded her equipment? Why was her gear so far from where she had been diving with her group? The discovery was troubling, and the rescue team knew that time was running out. About 2 hours later, Sue's body was discovered 60 feet below the surface, resting on a ledge within the cave. Her lifeless form was a testament of the dangers that cave diving posed. Shockingly, Sue was still wearing her weight belt when she was found. For divers, the weight belt is one of the first pieces of equipment to be thrown away in an emergency, as it helps the diver to rise quickly to the surface. The fact that Sue still had her weight belt on led to questions about what had really happened. Some wondered if there had been foul play involved, while others believed that Sue had become disoriented and panicked in the strong currents, leading her to make fatal decisions. The recovery of Sue's body was a difficult and emotional process for all involved. The rescue team worked tirelessly to bring her remains to the surface, carefully navigating the treacherous cave system. The other divers in the group were left devastated by the loss of their friend and companion. For them, the excitement of the dive had turned into a nightmare, one that would leave them with lasting scars. After all this incident was over, questions and doubts still remained as to what had happened below the surface. What had caused Sue to become separated from the group in the first place? Had she made a wrong turn, or had the strong current simply swept her away? Why had she discarded some of her equipment but not her weight belt? The divers who were with her that day were left with the painful memory of losing a friend in such a tragic and unexpected way. Cave diving is a sport that requires skill, experience, and caution. While it offers the thrill of exploring unseen places, it also comes with inherent dangers. The incident involving Sue Turner serves as a sobering reminder of the risks that come with underwater cave exploration. Even the most prepared and experienced divers can find themselves in life-threatening situations when exploring the depths of the ocean. Sue's tragic death also started discussions in the diving community about the importance of safety rules. Divers were reminded of the importance of staying together as a group, talking clearly, and always having a plan for emergencies. The recovery of Sue's body also raised awareness about the dangers of the Blowhole Cave and its surrounding areas, leading authorities to warn divers about the risks of exploring the caves. For Sue Turner, what began as an exciting dive into the unknown ended in tragedy. Her story is one of both the thrill and the danger that comes with cave diving. Sue loved to explore and have adventures. That's why she went to Blowhole Cave that day. Unfortunately, her life was tragically cut short. But her spirit of adventure and curiosity continues to inspire those who hear her story. Cave diving, like all extreme sports, has risks and uncertainties. For those who dare to explore, the excitement of discovery is often mixed with the understanding that the ocean can be unpredictable and sometimes dangerous. As we reach the end of this tragic tale, it is clear that the ocean's depths, though mesmerizing and full of wonder, are not without their dangers. Cave diving, with its promise of discovery, can quickly turn into a deadly challenge if respect for the environment is lost. Sue's passion for exploration led her into the unknown, but the price she paid serves as a stark warning to all who seek the thrill of diving into these mysterious waters. So the next time you hear the roar of the ocean or feel the pull of adventure, remember this story. Stay safe, stay alert, and always respect the mysteries that lie beneath the waves. Dive deep, but never forget the risks that come with the beauty of the unknown. Thank you for watching and following Sue Turner's incredible yet tragic journey into the depths of the Blowhole Cave. Planning the ultimate caving adventure with your closest friends, only for it to turn into a nightmare. In 1967, 6 young explorers entered Cass Cave, thirst to conquer its depths, but what started as a thrilling descent quickly became a desperate struggle for survival. When one of them gets trapped, hanging helplessly in the dark, with no way to call for help. What went wrong, and how did they escape this terrifying ordeal? Watch the full video to find out how this thrilling adventure took a dramatic twist. Cass Cave is a remarkable natural wonder located in Cass, West Virginia on Cheat Mountain. Caves are fascinating underground spaces formed over thousands of years. They can have large rooms, stunning rock formations, and sometimes even waterfalls. Cass Cave is a good example of this. One of the cave's most impressive features is the Big Room. This enormous space is 800 feet long, 180 feet high, and 75 feet wide. It's like a vast underground hall with plenty of room to explore. Cass Cave also boasts the tallest underground waterfall in West Virginia and Virginia. This waterfall, named Lacey Suicide Falls, plunges 139 feet. The name might be a bit confusing because a suicide did occur in the cave, but it happened at a smaller drop near the entrance, not at the main waterfall. In June 1964, National Geographic showcased Cass Cave with a striking 2-page fold-out photograph. This photo, taken by Huntley Ingalls, shows a caver climbing a wire ladder next to the waterfall. The picture was brightly lit using a series of No. 2 press photo flash bulbs placed on an aluminum foil reflector below the waterfall. Exploring Cass Cave is not for the faint-hearted. Just before reaching the top of the waterfall, there's a challenging climb up to an upper chamber. This area has bolts where cavers can set up their ropes for the drop. The climb and descent are risky, so safety equipment like a belay is essential. After a 160-foot drop, cavers enter the Big Room. This large chamber leads to other parts of the cave for further exploration. Currently, Cass Cave is closed to the public because of the many rescue operations that have taken place over the years. Even though it's not open for visits right now, its beauty and unique features continue to be a topic of interest for cave enthusiasts and adventurers. On November 23rd, a group of 6 young adventurers, Frank Ahern, Eric Smith, Benny Stone, Bonnie Jo Grieve, Mary Cole, and Pam Riley, all aged between 20 and 23, set out for an exciting caving expedition in Cass Cave. they planned to explore one of the cave's most impressive features, the Big Room. The group was eager to experience the thrill of rappelling down into this vast underground chamber. At 1 p.m., they began their descent, starting from a spot known as the belay loft, which is a secure platform from where they could safely rig their ropes. The Big Room is a massive space, and the descent they were about to make was 180 feet long. This is no small feat and requires careful planning and execution. By 2:30 p.m., Eric Smith and Frank Ahern had successfully descended to the Big Room with the help of their belay lines, which are safety ropes that help secure their descent. Bonnie Jo Grieve followed next. However, her descent quickly turned into a dangerous situation. Her belay and rappel lines became tangled, causing her to stop halfway down. She found herself hanging in midair, her belay line tightening painfully around her chest. This was a critical moment. Those at the top of the cave couldn't see what was going wrong, and the roar of the waterfall in the Big Room made it impossible to communicate with those at the bottom. The situation was becoming more dire as the minutes ticked by. Realizing the urgency, Benny Stone decided to take action. He lowered a third rope and began his descent to help Bonnie Jo. When he reached her, he found her too exhausted to help herself. With no other option, he called for additional help from the top. Stone struggled with the tangled ropes for an hour or two, becoming increasingly tired. Eventually, he had to Prusik back up to the top using a special climbing technique. Meanwhile, Eric Smith ascended once more and managed to free Bonnie Jo's belay line. He then Prusiked in tandem with her for several hours. Despite their efforts, the ropes became too tangled to continue making progress. After 5 hours of hanging in the ropes, the only option left was to lower Bonnie Jo down to the bottom using a controlled rappel which was managed from below. Back at the top, help finally arrived. Aig Sandqvist, Mike Ballister, and John Payne came from Greenbank, responding to a distress call made by Pam Riley. Mary Cole descended with some comfortable slings for Bonnie Jo, and Frank Ahern and Benny Stone went up to assist with the rescue operation. With the extra help, Bonnie Jo was carefully pulled out of the cave. A ladder provided by the rescuers made the exit easier for everyone involved. It's important to note that none of the women in this group had extensive vertical caving experience. They had only been on a few caving trips before this one. Deep and complex caves like Cass Cave should not be attempted by inexperienced adventurers. If the group had taken on a simpler cave first, they might have avoided this dangerous situation. This dramatic rescue highlights the importance of proper preparation and experience when exploring challenging caves. Caving is an incredible adventure, but it comes with risks that need to be managed with caution and respect. The Cass Cave rescue was a dramatic reminder of how quickly a thrilling adventure can turn into a life-or-death situation. Bonnie Jo Grieve's terrifying ordeal, trapped in midair and struggling to stay safe, showcased the raw danger of caving without enough experience. Thanks to the quick thinking and bravery of her friends and the rescue team, Bonnie Jo was brought to safety, but not without a harrowing 5-hour struggle. This story serves as a powerful lesson. Never underestimate the risks of caving, especially in complex and deep caves like Cass Cave. Proper training, experience, and safety measures are crucial to avoid dangerous situations. If you enjoyed this intense rescue story, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our thrilling adventure videos. Imagine a Sunday afternoon adventure that goes horribly wrong. 3 friends enter a cave, unaware that their fun exploration will soon turn into a desperate fight for their lives. As they make their way through a dark, narrow tunnel, a hidden danger awaits them, a fire that traps them inside. What happened next is a haunting tale of bravery and tragedy. Stay tuned to uncover the mystery behind their terrifying experience. Carnegie Cave, a well-known cave, is partly located under Interstate 81 near Exit 10, King Street exit at Shippensburg. The cave has 1,905 feet of passages and has been explored for at least 80 years, according to Bernard Smeltzer. The earliest description of Carnegie Cave is from Stone in 1932, who mentioned its location on the Mower Farm. At that time, the entrance was through a quarry opening on the north bank of Thompson Run Creek. In 1958, Smeltzer updated the land ownership information, stating that the cave is on the Henry Jacoby property, which was formerly the Carnegie Farm. Originally, there were 3 entrances to the cave, all located in the quarry. However, due to the construction of Interstate 81 in the early 1960s, only 1 entrance remains. Before completing this section of the highway on June 9, 1964, the York Grotto petitioned Penn Doty to preserve access to Carnegie Cave. As a result, the main entrance, located in the I-81 median, was maintained by cementing a corrugated metal pipe into the opening and extending it out the west side of the highway embankment. This pipe is 3 feet in diameter and 155 feet long, with sections sealed together using a tar-like material. The original easternmost entrance lies approximately 30 feet below the highway, and underground, one can hear truck traffic from the surface. Most of the cave extends to the north-northwest of Interstate 81. Carnegie Cave has become a popular spot, but unfortunately, this has led to some vandalism. Despite this, the cave still has some excellent speleothems, which are natural cave formations. One of the most interesting features in Carnegie Cave is the well-developed rim pools, or rimstone dams. These rim pools can be found in the northern end of the cave, northwest of the cross-section labeled VV on the cave map. Rim pools are unique formations that look like small, interconnected ridges on the cave floor. They create pools of water that resemble terraces. Water usually flows over these rim pools, moving from one crescent-shaped pool to another. The process of forming rim pools is fascinating. When water flows over an obstacle in the cave, it gets slightly stirred up. This agitation causes carbon dioxide to be released from the water. As a result, calcite, a type of mineral, starts to deposit on the lip of the dam created by the rim pool. More water flows over the lower parts of the dam than the higher parts, leading to more calcite being deposited in these areas. This keeps the top of the dam nearly level over time. Even though Carnegie Cave has faced some damage due to vandalism, the presence of these remarkable speleothems, especially the rim pools, continues to attract and fascinate visitors. Charles Morris Richter, the son of Dr. Carl M. Richter and Anna Mae Uhler Richter, was born on February 1, 1951, in Carlisle. Charles was a member of the Zion Lutheran Church and had a brother named Edward and a sister named Mary Ann. On July 9, 1967, Charles, along with his friends Jerry Kyle, 16, and Nancy Jean Van der Lofsky, 17, were students at Big Spring High School. On that fateful Sunday, they decided to explore Carnegie Cave, a place known for its intriguing yet potentially dangerous passages. The entrance to Carnegie Cave is a 36-inch tar-lined drain pipe that stretches 150 feet long and passes under Interstate 81. All of them were inexperienced cavers, with Jerry being the only one who had been caving a few times before. As they entered, they met another group of novice cavers whose ages ranged from 15 to 20 years coming out of the cave. This group had left 2 candles burning inside the drain pipe. Charles and his friends passed by the candles without disturbing them, although it is possible that one of them might have accidentally kicked over one or both of the candles upon entering the cave. About 15 minutes later, as they began their return, they smelled smoke. Reaching the pipe, they saw a wall of fire blazing before them, blocking their only way out. Charles became terrorized and started crawling through the pipe into the flames, despite Jerry and Nancy shouting and warning him not to go. A nearby resident saw black smoke coming out from the pipe. Charles appeared from the pipe with his clothes on fire and collapsed to the ground. Emergency services arrived quickly, and Charles was rushed to the hospital. Meanwhile, Jerry and Nancy fell back deeper into the cave to avoid the flames. They stayed there and waited for 3 agonizing hours, hoping for rescue, while the fire raged on. About 3 hours later, after the fire had burned itself out, firemen and experienced cavers arrived at the scene. They found Jerry and Nancy safe and brought them out of the cave. Charles, however, was in a critical condition. He was transferred from Chambersburg Hospital to Temple University Hospital for treatment of 2nd and 3rd degree burns, covering 59% of his body. Despite the medical team's best efforts, Charles gave up to his injuries and passed away 3 days later on 12th of July. The tragic accident occurred as the 3 young people were attempting to exit the cave after their exploration, only to find their only escape route engulfed in flames. This heartbreaking event highlights the dangers that can come with exploring unknown places, especially without proper experience and equipment. Funeral services for Charles were held at Zion Lutheran Church in Newville. The service was led by Reverend John Pretz Jr. It was a very sad day as family and friends gathered to say goodbye to Charles. He was laid to rest in Maple Grove Cemetery in Elizabethville, a peaceful place where he will always be remembered. As the sun set over the peaceful Maple Grove Cemetery, the memory of Charles Morris Richter lingered in the hearts of all who knew him. His tragic end was a powerful reminder of how quickly an adventure can turn dangerous. While Charles's story is filled with sorrow, it also serves as a lesson in the importance of safety and caution. His bravery and spirit will never be forgotten, and his story will continue to inspire others to explore the world with care. Deep within the Earth's darkest recesses lies a world of mystery and terror. Caves have long fascinated us, but for some, they have become a grave. From the tragic fate of students to the diver whose body remained stuck for 41 years, these underground chambers have witnessed unspeakable horrors. But there are 3 cave incidents that will leave you on the edge of your seat. Join us as we dive deep into the heart of darkness and uncover these chilling tales. But be warned, the third one is not for the faint of heart. Viewer discretion is advised. Cave Creek in Deep Creek Canyon. First, we are headed to Cave Creek in Deep Creek Canyon, where a moment of joy turns into a moment of horror. A group of people, mostly students, were enjoying a beautiful day when disaster struck. The incident would leave behind a trail of grief, shock, and unanswered questions. New Zealand has over 1,500 known caves, and many of them are in Paparoa National Park. The park is famous for its stunning natural beauty, with high cliffs, green rainforests, and rugged coastlines. The park's special rocks, shaped by millions of years of erosion, have created a network of underground tunnels and big rooms, making it a great place for people who love adventure and exploring. Cave Creek is located in Paparoa National Park on the west coast of New Zealand's South Island. It has been a popular destination for tourists and locals alike. The area's amazing scenery, combined with its rich history and culture, make it a great place to visit. A group of students from Tai Pautini Polytechnic, a leading tertiary education provider in Greymouth, New Zealand, visited Paparoa National Park. The Polytechnic, which offers a range of outdoor education and recreation programs, typically organizes several trips to the park each year, providing students with hands-on learning experiences in a unique and beautiful environment. But this time, they didn't know that they would lose 14 lives. The group, led by their tutor, David Benson, was accompanied by 2 Department of Conservation, or DOC officers, Steve O'Halloran and Peter Hodgson. As they made their way through the bush, a smaller group consisting of Benson, O'Halloran, and 3 students, Rachel McNulty, Michael Taylor, and Emily Wilson, split off from the main group. The larger group of 17 students and Hodgson continued towards the scenic viewing platform, unaware of the impending disaster. The scenic viewing platform was a raised observation deck located in Paparoa National Park, offering breathtaking views of the surrounding landscape. The platform was designed to provide a safe and accessible vantage point for visitors to take in the stunning scenery of the canyon below. It was approximately 40 meters above the canyon floor, providing an unobstructed view of the rugged terrain and scenic vistas. The smaller group had wandered off to explore the surrounding area, leaving the main group to proceed to the platform. The students were excited to take in the breathtaking views of the canyon below. Little did they know, their lives were about to take a devastating turn. The events that unfolded would leave a lasting impact on the families and friends of the victims and would become one of New Zealand's most tragic accidents. As the sun shone brightly on April 28, 1995, both groups were filled with excitement and anticipation as they ventured deeper into the heart of Paparoa National Park. The larger group reached the viewing platform first, their footsteps echoing through the stillness of the forest. As they gathered at the edge of the platform, their chatter and laughter filled the air. It was 11:25 a.m., and the students were eager to take in the breathtaking views of the canyon below. But then, in a thoughtless moment, some students started rocking the platform back and forth, not realizing that their playful joke would have devastating consequences. The platform, which was built in 1992, had some design flaws and had not been properly maintained, making it vulnerable to collapse. In fact, the builders of the platform did not have the appropriate qualifications for the job. During its construction, 12 major problems or oversights occurred, including the use of nails instead of bolts to connect the bearers to the piles. This was because no drill was brought to the site, a critical mistake that would later prove disastrous. As a result, the platform was highly unsafe, especially when large numbers of people were on it. As the students continued to rock the platform, it suddenly gave way. toppling forward into the chasm in a heart-stopping instant. From a height of 40 meters, the platform crashed down, sending 14 people plummeting to their deaths. To put this into perspective, most viewing platforms in national parks typically stand at around 10 to 20 meters high, making this platform's collapse all the more catastrophic. In the moments before the tragedy, the students were filled with a mix of excitement and nervousness. They were thrilled to be experiencing the thrill of the platform, but they were also aware of the risks involved. As the platform swayed, they felt a growing sense of unease, their laughter and chatter dying down as they realized something was wrong. The sound of screams and crunching wood filled the air as the platform disintegrated, sending its occupants on a fatal free fall into the depths of the canyon below. As the second group arrived, they saw a terrible sight. The platform was broken into pieces, its wooden planks splintered and scattered on the ground. The students' happy sounds had turned to screams and cries of sadness. The air was filled with the sounds of panic and fear as people stumbled around in shock, trying to understand what had happened, their faces frozen in horror. The remaining DOC officer, Steve O'Halloran, and one of the students, Michael Taylor, knew that they had to act fast. They ran back to the start of the track to get help, but when they got there, they realized that they had no way to get back to town. The keys to their vehicles were missing. So, Steve went back to the accident site to help the survivors, while Michael took a note with information about what had happened and started running along the road to find help. The road was a quiet, winding route that snaked its way through the dense forest of Paparoa National Park. It was remote, with few cars passing by, especially on a weekday morning. Michael ran as fast as he could, his feet pounding the asphalt, but he didn't see a single car or person for a long time. The only sounds were the birds chirping in the trees and the rustling of leaves in the wind. Finally, at 12:15 p.m., Michael reached a phone at a remote farmhouse and called the police in Greymouth. Breathlessly, he told them about the platform collapse, his words tumbling out in a rush. The police sprang into action, dispatching ambulances and rescue teams to the scene. The remoteness of the site, deep within Paparoa National Park, made it extremely challenging for medical services to reach the survivors. The first person to arrive at the scene was a Greymouth police constable, who made the arduous journey on foot, taking 2 hours to reach the site. Ambulances from Greymouth and Westport eventually arrived, but the terrain was so difficult that they had to be escorted by police and rescue helicopters. Despite the heroic efforts, only 4 severely injured students were rescued and airlifted to safety. Little Dismal Sink tragedy. Another tragic incident shook the diving community as the world was still reeling from the Cave Creek disaster. A group of divers in Florida would face their own nightmare in the unmapped waters of Little Dismal Sink. A team of skilled divers, including renowned experts like Parker Turner, Bill Gavin, and Bill Main, embarked on an ambitious project to map the Little Dismal Sink in Leon County, Florida. This complex operation involved 3 separate parties working together simultaneously within the cave. Their primary objective was to collect valuable geological and survey data, which would provide insights into the cave's structure and behavior. The expedition was a crucial step in understanding the region's geology and hydrology. By collecting data on the cave's layout and features, the team aimed to identify potential connections to other underground rivers and aquifers. This knowledge would be essential for managing water resources, preventing pollution, and mitigating the risk of sinkholes. Florida has many caves, with over 700 known caves, and among those is Little Dismal Sink, an underwater cave in the Apalachicola National Forest in Florida. It's part of the Leon Sinks cave system and is known for its unique features, including a 75-foot drop into the Floridian aquifer. The Leon Sinks cave system, which includes Little Dismal Sink and Big Dismal Sink, is a network of underwater caves and sinkholes. Big Dismal Sink is a separate cave located in the same area as Little Dismal Sink. It is known for its large entrance and extensive underwater passages. Both caves are only suitable for experienced and fully certified cave divers. On Sunday morning, May 15, 1988, a team went on a mission to gather crucial geological data and survey information for the remaining sections of the upstream and downstream tunnels in the deep part of the cave. The deep section of Little Dismal Sink Cave is a remarkable feature of the cave system, plunging to great depths. It is estimated to be at least 100 feet deep, with some reports suggesting that it reaches as far as 140 feet. This section is marked by narrow passages and underwater tunnels that demand specialized gear and expertise to navigate. The deep section is also notable for its unique geological features, including limestone formations and hidden waterways. Their search began as typical for other dives that went into the cave. Parker Turner and Steve Brown focused on gathering rock samples, igniting a rush of excitement. They both were in the first room, which was the upper section of the cave. This area was characterized by its high ceiling and relatively calm waters, making it an ideal spot for collecting samples. The first room was also known for its unique geological formations, including towering stalactites and stalagmites that rose from the cave floor. Parker and Steve worked methodically, documenting each sample and noting its location and characteristics. Meanwhile, Bill Gavin motored ahead to the downstream tunnel to continue the survey. Brian McFarland and Bruce Miller headed to the upstream tunnel to complete the survey in that area. As they made their way through the upstream tunnel, they encountered challenging conditions. The tunnel was low in places, and the water was very silty, making it difficult to navigate. As Miller led the way, laying out a new knotted survey line, Brian followed closely behind, taking compass readings and recording notes on the survey slate. However, their progress was briefly halted when Brian's battery pack, a critical component of a diver's equipment that powers essential tools like lights and communication devices, became entangled in the line. A situation that could have compromised their ability to communicate, navigate, and even breathe. Miller quickly swam back to assist, his heart racing. The sight of tangled equipment was alarming, but together, as a team, they managed to free the equipment. Shortly after, the line became snarled again, this time on Brian's safety reel. Instead of panicking, a sense of unity took over and it was quickly resolved. They were finally able to continue their survey without any further issues. They communicated with gestures and quick glances, each person's determination shining in their eyes. As Bruce Miller turned around at the sixth room, he was met with an unsettling sight. Brian McFarland was nowhere to be seen. A few moments passed and Bruce's concern grew. Bill Gavin approached and Bruce informed him that Brian was still in the upstream tunnel. Bill swam up the line and found Brian, who had strayed from the line but appeared to be unharmed. So with the team united, they began their ascent, heading towards the well, located at the bottom of the fifth room. The delay in finding Brian had taken a toll on their air supply, and they had been operating at a depth of 220 feet for an extended period. As they reached the well, Bill hooked up to his specially modified deep propulsion vehicle, also known as DPV, a device used in scuba diving to help divers swim more efficiently and conserve energy while underwater. It is essentially an underwater scooter that allows divers to cover longer distances without getting tired. Bill was ready to begin his exit, marking the start of their journey back to the surface. As the situation unfolded, Brian McFarland suddenly flashed a distress signal to Bill Gavin, indicating that he was out of air. Without hesitation, Bill immediately handed over his long hose, allowing Brian to breathe from his air supply. Bill then activated his DPV and began to ascend the well, carefully venting his dry suit to control their speed. However, Brian had lost control of his own dry suit and was clinging to Bill's manifold, causing them to rise rapidly to a depth of 100 feet. Bruce Miller quickly intervened, grabbing Brian's legs in an attempt to stabilize his buoyancy. Bill tried to persuade Brian to switch to Bruce's air supply, but Brian refused to release his grip on the manifold. With his own air supply dwindling to 1,000 psi, which is pounds per square inch, Bill knew that they had to move quickly because as this pressure decreases, it suggests that the air supply is running low, which can be critical for safety and ability to breathe. They still had about 700 feet to cover to reach the entrance, and he was now sharing air with Brian. Bill powered the DPV, with Brian and Bruce clinging to him, and they began their ascent through the cave system. They navigated through the fourth room, the shortcut, and into the second room, making progress, but with Brian struggling to breathe. Bill realized that this was going to be a close call. As they approached the duct under the first room, they experienced another sudden ascent, this time from 110 feet to 60 feet in depth. Brian's dry suit buoyancy was still out of control, and Bruce thought about cutting it to release some air. However, he worried that the sudden rush of cold water could panic Brian and make things worse. A dry suit is designed to keep divers warm and buoyant, but if it traps too much air, it can cause problems underwater. Bruce knew that he had to act carefully to keep Brian calm and safe. They finally reached the balcony and entered the low-bedding plane passage before the restricted portion at the cave entrance. Bill's regulator began to breathe harder, and he realized that even at this close proximity to the entrance, they were still at risk of drowning. With his lungs burning, Bill looked over at Bruce and saw that he had only one regulator. Brian had switched to Bruce's long hose. Now, 2 divers were out of air, with the restrictions still to navigate. In a state of panic, Bill took 3 breaths from Bruce's regulator, but he was numb from the lack of air, stressed, and barely coherent. It was then that Brian let go, and they realized that he had passed out. Bill feared that Brian might not survive, but Bruce quickly grabbed him and pulled him through the restriction, finally reaching their decompression stop with oxygen bottles. The 3 divers went through their prolonged decompression, burdened by the mental horror of the ordeal that they had just endured. While they survived, the incident was a stark reminder of the risks and challenges associated with underwater cave diving. Schroeder's Pants Cave. You've seen some scary stories of caves, but this one is the worst. James and his friends go into the dark Pants Cave, not knowing what they'll find. What happens next is terrifying. The screams still haunt, the nightmares still scare, and the tragedy will leave you speechless. This is the last part of today's cave stories, and it is very disturbing. Located in Herkimer County, New York, near Goodell Corners, Schrodinger's Pants Cave is a remarkable limestone cave that showcases the region's unique geological features. The cave structure is characterized by a series of narrow passages, towering ceilings, and vast underground chambers. The walls and ceilings are adorned with stunning formations, including stalactites, stalagmites, and flowstones. Hans Schroeder, a German-born explorer with a sense of adventure, discovered the cave in the late 19th century. During his initial expedition, he became extremely excited and accidentally ripped his pants on a jagged rock. As a result, he had to continue exploring the cave in his underwear, which was quite embarrassing. His friends found the incident hilarious and called him Pantsless Hans. Over time, the cave itself came to be known as Schroeder's Pants Cave, a humorous reminder of Schroeder's awkward yet amusing mishap. November 15, 1965 was a typical northeast winter morning, cold and snowy. James, a 23-year-old adventurer, set out to explore the local Schroeder's Pants Cave in Dolgeville, New York with his 2 friends, Haiti Miller and Charles Bennett. The 3 friends had met at the Boston Grotto of the National Theological Society and were all active members. James was an avid and enthusiastic young caver, always prepared for his adventures. He had even won an award from the National Biological Society for his outstanding scientific papers. As they trekked through the knee-deep snow, James's excitement grew. He had been to the cave entrance before, but this time he was determined to explore its depths. His friends were equally eager, and they made their way to the cave together. Little did they know that this adventure would turn into a tragic event that would change their lives forever. James was a seasoned caver, but this cave had its own secrets and dangers. The group was about to face a challenge that would test their skills, their friendship, and their will to survive. James and his friends set out to explore the cave, but they should have been more prepared. A typical caving expedition to a challenging cave like Schroeder's Pants Cave should have included essential gear like detailed maps, first aid kits, and communication devices. However, they had none of these important tools. Undeterred, they trekked through the knee-deep snow for nearly a mile, finally reaching the cave entrance. James carefully hung a rope, and the three friends descended 50 feet into the unknown. As they made their way through the tight, pitch-black tunnels, their headlamps cast flickering shadows on the walls. A compass, rope guides, and emergency whistles would have been crucial in navigating the treacherous terrain, but they were not equipped. Despite the risks, they pressed on, eventually stumbling into a large chamber 235 feet from the entrance. James and his friends were exploring a big cave when they came across a huge room. In the middle of the room was a deep, dark hole that went down 75 feet. James, being a brave and experienced caver, decided to climb down into the hole. He started to make his way down, but then things quickly took a turn for the worse. As he descended, the sound of dripping water grew louder, and the air got colder. Suddenly, a lot of water started pounding down, hitting James from all sides. He tried to hurry up and get to the bottom, but it was too late. His rope got tangled, and his arm got twisted in a bad way. James was stuck, unable to move, and his friends up above could only watch in shock. The water kept pouring down, and James was in a desperate situation. He was running out of time, and his friends were powerless to help him. The accident had happened so quickly, and now James was fighting for his life. James's friends were in a state of panic as they tried to pull him to safety. They tugged on the rope with all of their might, but it was no use. James was stuck, and they couldn't budge him. One of his friends knew that they needed help, and fast. He left the cave to find assistance, hoping to find someone who could rescue James. A team of 6 specialists was flown in from Washington to lead the rescue effort. However, what James's friends didn't know was that this team was made up of young men with little to no experience. James's rescue was their first big test, and they were in way over their heads. As the team arrived at the cave, they were met with a daunting task. James was still stuck, and the water was still pouring down on him. The team tried to come up with a plan, but their inexperience showed. They were unsure of what to do, and James's life hung in the balance. The recovery team tried various methods to retrieve James's body, including rope-based systems, pulley-based systems, and manual carry. Rope-based systems use ropes and pulleys to lift or lower the person to safety, often in vertical caves or narrow passages. Pulley-based systems use pulleys to change the direction of the rope or gain mechanical advantage. Manual carry involves carrying the person to safety using manual labor. The rescue team worked hard for 3 long days to make the cave wider. They finally made progress, but it didn't last. As they pulled James's body out, the cave started to fall apart. The team had to make a tough choice. They cut the rope, and they slowly lowered James's body back down into the cave. When the human body is exposed to cold water for an extended period, it can experience a range of physiological changes, including a cold shock response, rapid drop in core body temperature, and increased risk of drowning and hypothermia. Well, in James's case, the prolonged exposure to cold water may have contributed to his body's inability to respond to the recovery team's efforts. For 41 years, James's body was left in the cave, a sad reminder of a life lost too soon. In 2003, a man named Christian Lyon decided that James deserved a proper burial. He got permission from James's family, and he went into the cave, determined to bring him home. After working hard for 4 hours, Christian finally came out, carrying James to the light. As he laid James to rest in a peaceful spot, the family gathered tears in their eyes, feeling both sadness and relief. But as they remembered him, whispers spread among the cave explorers. What secrets had James taken with him? The cave still held many mysteries, and some now wondered if it would reveal its truths one day. What else might be hidden in the shadows, waiting to be found? Well, along with these unanswered questions, our journey into the heart of darkness comes to an end. But the memories of these 3 cave incidents will haunt us forever. Remember, some secrets are better left unexplored, and some places are better left unvisited. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay out of the darkness.